It should be live now, and it's working. Yeah, we're live. Well, okay, we're not live. Our audio shouldn't be on there right now. I just have to load on the trunk wave for the music. I hope so. Well, we're going to be recording it, so even if people don't watch it live, they can watch it later. You don't hear me? Wait, do you hear this yet? Okay. Well, I would stop beating, okay? Wait, do you hear me? Do I sound fine now? Okay. Got me scared for a second. Okay, if you're listening to this, wait, hold on, listen. If you guys have the stream on in the background, I would turn off the audio because you're gonna get the feedback loop on that. It's really distracting. Yeah, just focus on the stream that we have here, and if you guys want to go back and watch it later, that's fine. Just don't have both playing at the same time because it's delayed. Okay, so I'm gonna switch it in like 5 seconds, so let's get ready. Okay, we're live. I want to thank everyone for showing up today. Darian and Tony, this is going to be the first debate that we've had for the live stream. So let's get off with introductions. Who are you? What's your major? And how would you politically define yourself?
You can go first, Tony.
Freaking Darian. I know what you're thinking right now. All right, so hey guys, my name is Tony Kamisi, and I'm actually going to be the vice president for CRU. My major is, I've changed it many times, but either I'm going to lean towards maybe on the finance side or marketing, but I am doing a minor in communication studies. Where do I define myself politically? So I'll say I'm not really too straightforward with that question, but as of now, I tend to lean a little bit more center left. I'm more center liberal in my case. So like I'm not staunchly blue. If I had to classify and say what color I'm closest to, it'd probably be like a baby blue, but not like a dark Bernie Sanders blue. So I tend to lean left, but I feel like joining CRU is the best opportunity for me because it's really going to open my eyes to maybe a lot of perspectives that I disagree on, but I do agree with a lot of.
Hey, I want to apologize real quick. Can we just start that over again because I had the audio down?
Oh, okay, yeah, no worries.
Sorry.
All right, so just start off. Okay, so hey, hello everyone. I think some of you guys know me. My name is Tony Kamisi. I'm an ASU student, and my major. I kind of have a difficulty understanding what major I'm actually doing, but I'm either leaning towards finance or marketing. It just kind of depends. I'm still doing more research on it, but I'm doing a minor in communication studies. So what do I classify myself in the political, sphere? Where do I classify myself? I probably would have to say that I classify myself a little bit more liberal. I'm more center left, so like a moderate liberal. I would answer. I used to be so much more conservative, and I used to be so much more liberal before. So I kind of am all over the place. I usually change my perspective on issues a lot, but I do lean center liberal entirely. So looking forward to the whole debate, and yeah.
All right, and now Darian.
All right, so I'm also a student at ASU. I am an incoming junior. My major is global management, which is basically a synonym for international business. Uh, as for who I originally supported during the 2016 primary, I voted Bernie Sanders. It was more of an anti-Hillary vote. But as for the Republican candidates, definitely Rand Paul would be my favorite in there. What about you, Tony?
Oh, okay. So this is yeah, it's just like Darian. I personally supported Bernie Sanders myself, even though I did disagree with him on many issues personally. But I supported him primarily because I just could not stand Hillary Clinton. I am just like on Darian's boat. I am hugely, hugely anti-Hillary Clinton. But it's ironic because I do like her husband a lot. I think Bill Clinton, oh man, he's like one of my favorites personally. But I just don't like his wife. But who I actually voted for in the actual election between Hillary Clinton and Trump, Donald Trump, Trump, Trump all the way. I was a Trump guy personally. Man, me and Darren, we were celebrating when we found out he was the winner. So I was a Trump guy. So
So, if you had to give Trump a letter grade for his progress that he's done so far since becoming president, what would he get? What are you happy with, and what are you unhappy with?
okay, wait. Do you want me to answer that or
Yeah,
Darren?
go ahead. Like I said, this isn't going to be a formal debate between us. This is more like a conversation. So go ahead, banter back and forth. We're not taking turns. Just go at it.
Okay, so I guess Darren, you can go ahead, man.
Okay. I don't. I'm not for sure. Maybe like a B minus. He's done good and bad. I think it was great that we pulled out of the Paris Climate Accords. That was a huge waste of money for basically almost zero effect on our climate. So I thought that was useless. Not to mention that it was non-binding and that it gave China and India a lot of ground to pollute and get away with it anyways, and none of them had to follow what they had to follow in the agreement. That was good. Bad things he's done. Reauthorizing FISA, that was bad. I'm very against the Patriot Act and giving the government power to interfere with the private lives of citizens. Um, that's all I can think about off the top of my head right now. There's definitely other stuff, but oh yeah, the tax bill's great. Cut taxes. 80% of Americans pay less taxes. That's great. That's good. I don't like that he's spending money and increasing the debt in a similar fashion that Obama did.
Okay. Um, so where would I grade Trump? This is really hard for me. Personally, I would maybe give him probably a C minus, but a D plus maybe at the
Oh
best,
wow.
because yeah, I know I'm a little bit critical over President Trump because I don't know I was thinking he would have had this mentality to do so much immediately after he became president. But he actually did certain things that I did like a lot, like getting us out of TPP. I thought that was an amazing, amazing deal. Even though I lean more free trade, I thought TPP was just too much paperwork. We didn't really know what was too much into it. So I think getting out of TPP was good. The other thing that I did like so much of what Trump did, and I think in my opinion this will probably go down as his defining moment, which could possibly win him 2020, is North Korea. He dealt with the North Koreans. He did excellent, better than any other president was able to do before. So I'll definitely give him a lot of credit for North Korea. Nobel Peace Prize, that's a little bit different. But the things that I did disagree with is the travel ban. I'm staunchly against the travel ban. I just didn't think it was right, in my opinion, a little bit morally. I did think it was a Muslim ban, as many people would say. I do agree with that adage. I also did disagree with barring transgender people from going to the military. Sure, I can see the arguments for both sides, but I just didn't think that it was the proper executive order. Um, the other thing that I didn't really like too much about President Trump would be, if I can think, mm, I mean, I, I'm highly critical more so of the Congress personally than Trump. I just feel like Trump can do so much more if the Congress is willing to work with him. So I'm actually going to give Congress like a D minus. I think this Congress has really been very ineffective, especially when it comes to DACA. I know Trump would have signed a bill to adhere to DACA, but
I kind of
Congress isn't working on it. Yeah,
I feel what you're saying because like I feel like that Trump is trying to balance a lot of different cliques within the GOP. Because you know
that's
like
why it's hard for me to decide if Trump is doing really good, but I don't know. I just don't feel like he's doing his best right now,
Yeah.
as he mentioned when he first
Well,
started.
I mean, he could pick a side and get rid of all the neocons and all the rhinos from one group, but then it would be a lot of dysfunction with like the McCainites, with the Jeff Flake kind of conservatives, and then nothing would get done. So he has to really tiptoe on what he says publicly and how he does things without having a section of the GOP, you know, insurrect and join the Democrats essentially against him.
Yeah, can I just say one thing?
Yeah.
That is the reason. That's actually the main reason why I didn't like Trump a lot. I think his certain picks for the cabinet was pretty bad, in
Yeah.
my opinion. John Bolton, which was later on, I think was one of his worst picks. This is a neoconservative, and in my opinion, I thought he was much more dangerous than a lot of people would probably think. And I think they do think that he's very like he actually supported. He thinks that going to Iraq was a good
Oh
idea.
yeah, he
He's
advocates for
he's a
war
war
against
hawk,
Iran for sure.
and a
Boo.
lot of conservatives, Trump conservatives, were highly against Trump's pick for that.
Well, because it
Um,
was Iraq was such a bungle of a war, and like you know he hasn't really recovered his reputation since then, and for some reason Trump still picked him. And also
yeah.
the North Korea affairs, like everyone was saying that like he was trying to sabotage the whole meeting with Kim Jong Un.
Hmm. Interesting.
Okay,
Um,
yeah, go ahead and finish your thought.
Okay, yeah, yeah. I'll just say two more things. The thing that I did not disagree with Trump was launching missiles to Syria. I thought that was not a good idea because yes, I did think before that Assad had something to do with the problems that were going on with what was the gas called that killed
There,
those
yeah.
Syrian people?
Sarin
Sarin gas. There we go.
and mustard.
I actually was thinking it was Bashar al-Assad, but I started to think that I started to become skeptical that it was his government that actually did the atrocity. So I think bombing the Syrian camp, I'll just say the camp, was something I highly disagreed with
Well,
when it came to
like
Trump's
we know, like the
idea.
White Helmets have kind of collaborated with Al Qaeda before. Um, if you're a rebel group and you have your hands on the chemical weapons, I think for them to attack a civilian population and then blame Assad for it would be the best thing ever because it puts all the attention and pressure on the Assad regime and they want to topple that government. If they were to do it
Right.
themselves, then that would be suicide. There was no strategic value in attacking that location. Right now, Assad's winning the war. And then, especially with Trump, he had promised to pull troops out of Syria. We were within weeks of doing that. And then all of a sudden, Assad attacks the people with sarin gas. That makes no sense.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. See, and
Um,
and and that has a lot to do with his unpredictability. Trump is really unpredictable. It's scary for certain people, but at the same time, it's very exciting for a lot of people. I think
hugely
people
unpredictable.
hugely unpredictable. Are you kidding me? Whoever thought the same guy that was making these comments against Kim Jong Un, calling him Rocket Man, saying these things that which the American people were thinking we're going to be in a lot of trouble. Like this is going to be so bad for us. And then you find out the denuclearization of North Korea, putting a stop to nuclear weapons. Like that has a lot to do with unpredictability,
Right.
the unpredictability of Trump. And in my opinion, it was the most impressive thing that I've seen so far in this presidency.
All right, so we're going to shift over to healthcare now. Now, I know, Tony, you've
Oh,
said that you're in favor of a single payer plan. Can you please elaborate? What do you mean by that?
okay, so when I say I'm a single payer healthcare system kind of guy, I'm a proponent. Is I I will say that I do have exceptions. When I say single payer healthcare, you have to be an American citizen. Okay, I'll go by certain qualifications. You have to be an American citizen. You have to be qualified to work, and you can't be an illegal immigrant. And if you follow those tenets, obviously there's exceptions within exceptions. Like if you're someone who's disabled, if you're someone that can't, doesn't have the will to be able to work, then sure, you can get healthcare. But you have to be able to work. And if you do work, you should qualify for healthcare. And I do believe it should be government sponsored for the most part, I would say.
All right.
That's,
Darian,
that's what I
go ahead
mean.
and jump in.
Just like what my opinion on single payer healthcare?
Yeah.
No, it's bad. I don't. First of all, healthcare is not a right; it's a commodity. In the same way that food is not a right, we should not. Food should not be a human right, even though everyone needs it to survive. More so than healthcare, in fact. And it's immoral. I don't believe in forcing the taxpayer to pay into a system such as that, and that's why I'm against it.
So let me ask both of you, where in the Constitution does it say that healthcare is a right and not a privilege?
It doesn't.
It doesn't at all.
So aren't
We
aren't rights only
yeah.
found in the Constitution?
You're correct. Yeah,
Well,
the Constitution advocates for peace, having be able to peace, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So
Right. So
we
then
agree.
so
there
they're vague,
it
a
is
little
it's
bit vague
vague,
on that.
right? It's open to
Right.
interpretation in parts of it, but there's no 22nd Amendment that states specifically that healthcare should be a right to all people and that we're all should have access to cheap and I mean even the idea of what is cheap, what is affordable is kind of vague because people all have different kinds of incomes. So
Yeah.
there's your issue there.
Yeah.
So, I mean, here's another thing. Let's talk about supply and demand for a second. So, if you're going to subsidize healthcare, and by doing so, you're going to make it more affordable to the average person, aren't you going to increase the demand for healthcare, right? Makes sense.
Hmm.
So
For
when
the
you
most part.
when you increase the demand, you have to also increase the supply. And the problem with like Canada and the UK in particular is they just don't have enough doctors, they don't have enough resources to supply the population with the huge demand. So what typically happens in a lot of socialized medicine countries is you have rationing of healthcare, where if you have to get a hernia operation, unless it's like not like stringently important right now, you got to be on a waiting list for as long as like 6 months. Whereas in America, if you got the cash, you can get done within the same week. And people have died as a result of that. And there's like tons of documents of where people have suffered as a result of that. If you look at like Native American healthcare or the veterans with the VA here today, they all have to wait because they cannot go to a private doctor and have the government subsidize it. They have to go to a certain kind of doctor that has all the qualifications through the VA program. Um, how would you amend that without destroying the debt? Like without increasing the debt?
Okay. How I would do that is not fairly a popular opinion, I think, but I think that we do. I think we have to make certain cuts to other sections of our public spending. So I think if we cut back, like in certain programs that we don't deem as necessary, because I do think healthcare is very necessary, and for the ones who do believe that a free market uh, based healthcare, I would think that they would care as well. I don't like to think that if you're against single payer healthcare, you don't care at all. But how I would look at it is I would make certain cuts to other spending that we do.
Like the military?
And military, yes, I was actually just going to say that. I think we do spend way too much on the military. There's this one aircraft we've spent so much money on, and I'm thinking in my mind, uh, it's like an F-35 fighter. That's what it's called. We spent so much money on that, and I'm trying to think in my mind if all the money that we're funneling for that specific project within the military could go to healthcare instead and provide for for the basis of every citizen that I've named who does go to work, who I guess would is the average American working hard. I think in that case they would deserve healthcare if we did cut.
So that
Um,
that is
So
go ahead,
you mind if I
Darian.
go real quick?
Yeah, go ahead.
sure,
So
sure.
it sounds good in theory, but unfortunately, it's not reality. While I do agree on scaling back spending on the military, I think it should be mainly defensively focused. Just to give you some food for thought, the United States spends $598.5 billion a year on military, or that's the 2015 spending figure for how much the US government spent federally on military.
Mhm.
Meanwhile, in healthcare, for example, if you look at Bernie Sanders' Medicare for All plan that he had, a liberal think tank called the Health Policy Center estimated that his Medicare for All single payer healthcare system would cost $32 trillion in federal spending in 10 years. And that's the absolute best case scenario. Keep in mind, this is coming from a liberal think tank. And there are plenty of people who've estimated at more. So scaling back on military, while good in theory, it's not reality. We spend $580 billion on military in 1 year. Bernie Sanders' healthcare plan would add over $30 trillion to the debt. Single payer system would add over $30 trillion to the debt in 10 years. So it's just simply incomparable figures.
Right. Well, I think that okay. So how I would say is the reason why I tend to fall into this category is because what if your employer does not provide any healthcare means whatsoever for the specific employee? He doesn't qualify for Medicaid or Medicare because they don't have enough money. So I'm trying to think
Well,
in
that's why we
in
should have
this.
a free market system. Employers shouldn't be forced to provide healthcare. People should be able to seek out healthcare the way they want to.
But that's the problem. What if a family that doesn't qualify for Medicare at all? Like I'm trying
We
to
don't.
think,
We
how
shouldn't
would they
have
be able
Medicare.
to
Medicare
pay
should
to
be
get
destroyed.
into it? Huh?
We shouldn't have Medicare. It shouldn't exist. We should have a free market.
So okay. So for someone to live, okay, I'm just gonna say this hypothetically.
Mm-hmm.
If you're a father of two children, for instance, and there's no Medicare at all, then and they don't have enough money to afford going to a doctor whatsoever, because you have to understand that in a free market, because the philosophy is by having different hospitals compete against each other will essentially lower the price, and that'll be perfect for consumers. But I think in my mind, how would that be able to work in the sense that there's certain medical technology that is so expensive that certain hospitals are not willing to lower prices despite all the competition that they have
There isn't competition.
against other.
That's the issue.
There isn't.
No, there's not. There's plenty of there are a lot of regulations currently on the United States healthcare market, and those are causing the issues that we have today.
But okay, so by having a free
No one can
market
just
by
go and
its
create an X-ray machine. There's no competition whatsoever in the X-ray industry, for example, and that's a huge issue. That causes a lot of the problems we have with healthcare in the United States. There's a ton of regulation. You have to go through insurance companies, stuff like that. Those things shouldn't exist. They shouldn't be an issue.
hmm. But okay, so with that idea, when you speak about free market entirely, are you saying we shouldn't have any regulation whatsoever? Are you
What do you
saying
mean by
that?
that? What regulations do you think we should have?
So okay, I'll just answer my own question. But when I think of having no regulation for just the basis of just a free market by itself, I think that is fairly dangerous if you think about it. Because wouldn't that give doctors the right to say no to maybe specific people that they don't want help treating, for
Why
instance?
would a
So
doctor
like,
not want to treat someone?
I mean, it could happen because they probably don't have enough money. So essentially, yeah, if someone's working like in a minimum wage job, for example, and
Mm-hmm.
the doctor already knows by their own means that they don't make as much money to get by. So by the basis of the doctor understanding this guy is he looks poor to me, for instance, he doesn't work at, like a minimum wage, he works at a minimum wage job, for instance, without regulation at all, just by a free market by itself, doctors can say no to whoever they want, wouldn't you say? And that person ends up not getting treated, and they end up getting sicker, perhaps in the future.
Well, in the United States, emergency rooms are legally required to treat people,
It's
so
part of the HIPAA
that
Act.
doesn't happen.
So, and then they end up having to pay like a massive bill afterwards.
Or unless you're an illegal immigrant and you go into the hospital, you get your health care, you walk out, and then the
Yeah, and
hospital's down.
the reason why they pay a massive bill is because of the regulations we have in place that make medical treatment so expensive. If there was competition and incentive for free market, these prices wouldn't be the way they are right now.
So, but having a single payer healthcare program would mean that the debt is not on the individual. So the person that ends up having to pay $60,000 for after a post surgery, which is the current status now, by
Mm-hmm.
having a single payer healthcare system, they wouldn't have to pay anything. So I'm trying to think,
They pay
everybody gets treated, huh?
They pay it in taxes, which, by the way, we can't afford when it adds over $30 trillion at best to our debt in 10 years. It's completely unaffordable for our country and could destroy our economy.
So but I'm proposing. Okay, so with that idea though,
And also, you're also comparing apples and oranges. Under a free market system, a surgery, what kind of surgery are you thinking about? The surgery will
removing
cost
your
$60,000.
like a vasectomy, for example.
Yeah, it's not going to cost 60 grand under a single payer healthcare system. For example, if you look at LASIK eye surgery, the average price of it is about $2,000 per eye, slightly north of that, so maybe like 2,200 per eye. And that's because it's unregulated. Before that, it cost tens of thousands of dollars per eye before, when it was regulated, and you had to go through insurance and stuff to get those. But now that it's unregulated, it's extremely cheap and very affordable.
Okay. So with your idea, you say with a free market by itself that we shouldn't have insurance companies exist
No,
whatsoever.
they shouldn't.
Okay.
Unless someone wants
I
to go
mean,
pay for it on their own, but it shouldn't be a requirement like it is now.
okay, under Obamacare and everything.
Mhm.
But I don't know, because the thing that just makes me cling so much on this perspective is just the people who can't afford it. Like what kind of aid can they get if they can't afford getting the treatment that they
That's
need?
what we have
Because you're
charity
essentially,
for.
huh?
There are plenty of people there, but so we have charity for. There are
But
plenty of people who
yeah,
can't eat and can't afford to pay for their own food, but they still get it. No one starves to death in the United States. Healthcare would be a very similar thing.
but but how can you really depend on charity if it's not always, if it's
Americans
not
are
always gonna be,
the United States is the most charitable country in the world. Americans like donating to charity, and they do it.
sure, sure. I understand that, but what if, okay, I'm not going to go with what ifs, but I'm just trying to say, like, in a hypothetical sense, you can't depend too much on charities to provide aid for specific individuals if you know that how much charity is going to be, how much people are willing to donate to charities to have people get the healthcare that they need.
Why not
So
though?
what I'm trying to say is, with taxes that we pay is guaranteed to go to healthcare to provide aid for the
And
individuals.
it's guaranteed
It's
to be
already set in
worse and lower
stone.
quality, and
With
more people
charities,
will die because
not,
of delays in
not the same
treatment.
case. With charities, it's entirely different. Okay, the thing about charities as well you have to think about is charities are there not only to provide for the aid for specific individuals, but people are very specific of what charities that they donate to. So they might donate it to just provide aid for people who are hungry, but not necessarily maybe for healthcare. So we have to think about, where is the charity money actually going to go, or where is it going? Sure, you can say all you want that. Sure, we donate. America as a whole does have high charitable rates when it comes to individuals. In other words, people pay a lot into charity. But where is the charity money necessarily going? Is it really going to go to healthcare, or would it go to other sources? So what we're both speaking from is in a hypothetical sense by itself. So I think that, sure, charities could possibly help, but knowing where it goes is very, very kind of not apparent to us.
So why are there food banks in the U.S.? Why do people start not starve to death in the United States if we can't depend on charity?
Wait, food banks. Oh, so
Yeah,
you're saying, oh, so by charities? Okay.
I'm just saying I think it's silly to
But
suggest that we can't that
food is not
people are
nearly
just
as
going to suddenly
expensive as
stop donating.
healthcare though in many cases. Healthcare,
Because
that's why healthcare is so much more of a dispute than food, because food is much more affordable to the common
why is
person.
healthcare expensive?
Healthcare is not. Huh?
Why is healthcare expensive?
Because because a lot of the people that run the specific hospitals who do get a lot of the leeway can essentially, okay, one of the reasons is insurance companies, I will say. The other reason
Also,
is,
intense regulations.
yeah,
Which single payer healthcare introduces more intense regulation.
but everyone will be insured. We still have 20 million people that aren't
Wait,
insured.
here, Tony. Let me put in a moral argument. Okay, if my
Sure.
taxes are going to go up to pay for universal health care, right? Doesn't the government then have a obligation to lower the risk of um, issues that are going to increase the healthcare costs? So, fatty foods, sugar, people who climb up mountains, people who are going to be causing a draw from healthcare. Wouldn't the government then have an obligation to start stamping out the freedom of your choice of what you put into your body?
Not necessary. I wouldn't say so necessarily. I think we already do have programs
Do
like
you
that
think it's fair
now.
for someone with a common cold to go to the emergency room and cost taxpayers hundreds of dollars to
No,
go
no, 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 no.
with that?
Okay, no, okay, no, no, no. What I'm saying is, okay, let me be more specific. Um, it's everybody getting the treatment, I guess, equally. So, okay, I'll give you an example. If someone, so I guess I'll go by
Really bad.
the case of severity. If the more severe the case is for someone specifically, the more likely they should have the means to visit a doctor. So a lot of people, okay, so statistics have shown that if you live in a higher income area, you're less prone to get sick in many cases because you have a lot more resources available. You tend to have healthier eating habits because of affordability. It's not as much of a burden for the specific family that does have higher income to be able to get those kind of resources to help them preserve their health. But for low income families, it's not the case, especially since you're saying that we shouldn't have Medicare whatsoever. So I'm trying to think, how would we go about that entirely? But to answer your question, Rick, I'm sorry. I didn't want to excuse that at all. I feel like the government's already doing that right now.
Would it be worse though under an actual universal program?
Would it be worse?
Yeah. I mean, you've got a lot of like Californians and people in New York who are already pushing for a sugar tax. But if this was now a national
Oh,
program, like you do have in the UK or Canada, where now we want to start passing legislation to control fat people or people who do dangerous things. They're going to do that because it's going to take away from the cost of healthcare.
To answer what you were just talking about, Tony, low income people actually, so across the board with all incomes, low income, middle, and high income in the United States, people have lower mortality rates from cancer than when compared to other developed countries that use single payer healthcare, such as Great Britain, Canada, etc. So, and that's under our current crappy regulated system, which with the free market would be insane, would be much better.
Right.
They actually do have lower mortality rates in the United States, and that's because they get less delays in treatments, and that's with the unaffordable, overregulated system that we have right now.
For instance,
right.
Like
Okay.
like if you're a smoker, for instance, right, you're going to have lung cancer sometime down the line. Why wouldn't the
Right.
government just say, we're just going to ban tobacco?
Oh, okay.
Why
I
should the
see what you're
taxpayers
saying.
be forced to pay for bad habits like that?
Right.
People who are smoking should have to pay more for their own health care. They shouldn't be able to
Okay.
burden it on the taxpayer. Otherwise, people will just do whatever
And
they
then you
want with
start
their
this
health.
snowball effect of different. You start the snowball effect of more legislation to control that of those instances. They might just get rid of fast food altogether because it's all the high cholesterol problems that come with it.
You also have issues with the
Right.
government deciding that they can play God. For example, in the UK, 2 babies recently have been forced to be killed by the governments because they wouldn't allow the parents to seek treatment elsewhere outside the United States. One was named as Charlie Gard. I don't remember the name of the other one.
Oh, yes, I remember that case.
But
Yes,
in both
I
cases, the
remember.
parents wanted to take their own children out to the U.S. to try experimental treatment in order to try to save the babies' lives. But in both cases, the UK government decided that that they thought it was unfair to the baby, and that they decided they would pull the plug on the life support for the baby because the baby was too expensive to be paying for. And I don't like the government having that much involvement in our lives where they can control. Not only they control the taxpayers' money, but they get to decide how they want to use it in terms of whether someone deserves to live or not, and that's really morally incorrect.
Okay. I see what you're saying. But to answer your question, Rick, specifically about so essentially what you're trying to say is so if we do have a single payer healthcare system and people end up like going to eat fast food and then they end up making themselves worse, it just seems like they can go, let's just say, to the doctor as many times as possible. So couldn't that cause like a snowball effect for the most part? I think that's kind of what you're saying.
Right.
But that's a good point that you bring up because I'm trying to think that we already do have incentives already to tell people that eating an apple a day can keep a doctor away. Just all those, all those different things. Of
Yeah,
course.
but now we're talking about being forced to do those things.
The enforcement that would be,
or not being forced to do it, and then having to go have tons of unhealthy people running around making bad decisions and burdening the taxpayer.
right. I see what you're saying.
Which is also not ideal. Not to
So
mention
are
that
you,
we can't afford it.
so are you saying those people that end up doing those bad habits, they shouldn't get any health care whatsoever?
Well, no, because
they should pay for their own health care.
a universal system will provide the health care to those people
Oh,
no matter
so it's
what.
guaranteed. Yeah,
It's guaranteed.
Okay.
But
Fine.
the problem is
Sure.
you have a demand for this health care, and we're going to have waiting lines to get this healthcare access. So government has an interest to lower the demand any way they can. And if they think that a long-term investment of putting a new law out there that gets rid of tobacco, that gets rid of mountain climbers, that gets rid of certain things that's going to draw from those resources, they'll do it. We have authoritarians in California that would love to do sort of things like that.
Okay. I mean, I could go around to say that we should maybe place like certain burdens for them, but then that would mean it wouldn't be a universal healthcare system anymore. Oh, is that your dogs? So
my dog's pretty quiet actually, but we have a dog we're taking care of. My cousin.
she's excited for the debate.
Do you want to
So what I was
hold
trying.
on, Darian? Do you want to mute your microphone and control that?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah,
Okay, there you go.
Sit. Okay, so I mean, if people are willing to not have the incentive to make themselves healthier, essentially, obviously to combat obesity, they're gonna keep eating those fast foods and end up going to the hospitals or doctors more, which puts the burden on us because we are the ones who have to pay. But I come into this idea that, like I said, as long as you're working and you're not disabled, if you're someone who's looking for work, then sure, you should be able to get the healthcare. Because when I say universal healthcare, I don't necessarily mean universal as in every single person on this American soil gets it.
So like
I'm saying,
that's the
yeah.
opposite of what like Bernie Sanders says, because his main concern is
Okay,
rich people
so
can afford healthcare anyway. They can afford the private healthcare. It's the poor people, the unemployed, it's the disabled. It's those are the ones that aren't getting provided. So when he's talking about universal coverage, he's talking about the poor who aren't paying taxes.
So I'm essentially talking about. So I do agree with Bernie Sanders about maybe in certain cases when it comes to poor, the unemployed, the people that are probably working as hard as they can, but they still can't qualify for Medicare. They should be able to get the healthcare. But I don't agree with Bernie Sanders when it comes to every single person that can breathe, that has ears and
Can I
eyes
ask you
and
a question, Tony?
consciousness.
What if a U.S. citizen's rushed into an emergency room and needs treatment, but they have no proof of citizenship with them at that moment, and you don't know if they're a system or they're a citizen or an illegal alien? Do we just let them die?
I mean, well, in that case, well, no, it's like we would provide them the treatment anyway,
But
as it was mentioned.
then you do believe in universal health care because we'd have to do it to whoever comes in.
Oh, for okay, no. You have to have
You
no.
have
You
it
have
both
to
ways.
have you have to have proof. You have to have proof.
So what if there's no proof, but they are actually U.S. citizen and they have money,
They
but
have
they don't have
money.
proof of citizenship with them? And then what do we do?
Well, you can go by their. Do they have a social security number? Do they have a form
Well,
government
there's no time to
IDs?
check that. You can't when you have an emergency situation.
I
You
mean,
can't.
with every case, I feel like there is some sort of personal information to confirm who the person truly is walking through their door. I don't
Well,
think
sure,
there's
right
any
now.
such thing as someone that's coming in being anonymous in front of a doctor, and a doctor's thinking like, "Who is this guy?" Like,
That absolutely
I think
happens
that's
all
highly
the time.
impractical, man.
In the United States, people are required to treat whoever comes to the emergency room, and there are many cases where people write down fake information. The doctors have no idea who they are. So it is reality, and it happens every day.
So, because my main focus is if you're not working, if you're someone who's not working, they shouldn't qualify. So I guess you could say I am for a single payer healthcare system, but there has to be restrictions. So what I'm trying to say is, and I guess I haven't said this as an argument yet, but I guess I'll just say it is by having a single payer healthcare system, especially for people as long as they're working, especially if they're working. Trump proposed that people who get Medicare should be the ones working, and I actually do agree with that personally. Obviously, there's exceptions, disabled, all that stuff, but I think that having a single payer healthcare system can actually help save costs for a lot of businesses that already invest money into healthcare insurance for their
Well,
employees.
It's not going to save costs for anyone. It's going to be over $30 trillion over 10 years. It's going to cost the nation more.
so wait, hold on. Let's talk about Obamacare real quick, because one of his big things was about forcing employers to provide health care to employees. One of the rules that he did was he changed the definition of full-time work from 40 hours to 30 hours. And
Right.
instead of providing health care to their employees, employers would change their hourly work to minimum wage, or not to minimum wage, but to minimum hours, so that they would work 29 hours and not have to pay them healthcare, because it's in the best interest of a business to make a profit. And now when you're adding a cost onto a business, they're going to do everything they can to provide a profit for their company. So when you start regulating and telling a business provide healthcare to your employees, they're going to find every way out of that deal. So
But that's what I'm saying though. With a single payer healthcare system, businesses don't have to rely on providing extra money for let's just say Jimmy at work, for instance. So by having a single payer program, everybody within that stratosphere, for instance, would be insured, and they
so
wouldn't have to worry about extra
yeah, let
insurance.
me ask you another question. In Iceland,
Sure.
they have a
Now you
policy
get
right
into the market.
Hold on. In Iceland right now, they have a policy where if you have a child and they can detect this child's going to have Down syndrome or have some kind of physical ailment later in life, which is going to cause a lot of expenses to its healthcare system overall, they are strongly encouraging the parents to have an abortion so this child will not be a future problem. And this is what happens in a lot of these socialized countries. Norway does the same thing too.
Yeah, they have abortion rates of like 99% for children with Down syndrome.
Yes, yes. I remember. Darn, you told me about this before. I remember that. It was a big number.
So
So
go ahead.
yeah,
If you want to
keep
make
going.
one final point, then we have to move on to the next topic.
Sure, sure. Okay. You do got me thinking though. Like I said, I do have an open mind. I'm willing to be
Same
convinced.
here.
Man, you guys are good. I won't lie.
Yeah.
No, you guys are for sure. But wait. So are you saying you want me to give my final thoughts to my own perception of
You can
healthcare?
finish the
Answer the
point,
question.
or you can finish the point. You can add another point, however you want to take it. Just this was going to be like the
Okay.
last remark on it.
Okay. My last remark. I'll just make it quick. Okay. So I lean in support of a single payer system mostly is because we still have millions and millions of people that are uninsured. So to have a healthier country is to have people insured. So I think that if people aren't insured and they can't go to a doctor, for example, because the prices are too high, regardless of insurance being able to help them or not, then it will only make it more expensive for them to get the health treatment that they need later on in their lives. So why not provide healthcare assistance now and beyond so that they won't get sick later on in the future, than have them maybe until they go to the emergency room to finally get the treatment because they couldn't afford it the whole time. So that's all I'm going to say.
Darian?
I mean, yeah, I agree with you that a lot of people don't have insurance, and that's a terrible problem. That's why I think insurance shouldn't exist. That's why we should have a free market. Even with
Mhm.
that issue of being uninsured, low-income people in the United States are still treated better than people in single-payer systems in terms of mortality rates. They're less likely to die of bad diseases such as cancer, and that's with the bad system we have now. If we get rid of that, if we get rid of Obamacare, Medicare, insurance companies, all that crap, we'll have free market. It'd be a lot cheaper. When you consider LASIK eye surgery, and it's super complex surgery, which involves literally restructuring the eye so it can see properly, and that being about $4,000, a little over $4,000, close to $5,000 for both eyes being fixed. That's an amazing thing, and that's something that would help a lot. When you consider the average American probably pays about $20,000 for a car, a
Right.
brand new car in particular, not a used one, of course. It isn't unrealistic for that to be. Sorry, I mean, it isn't unrealistic for surgeries to cost that much and for American people to generally be able to afford it. And that's how
Okay.
I think insurance should be a lot more affordable for the United States. Not to mention for people in the United States. Not to mention we can't afford it. It's over $32 trillion in debt that'll add to us. And the reason why a lot of Nordic countries and such can't afford it more than we do is we pay for all their national defense, which I think is terrible and we shouldn't do. But that is the current reality.
So wait, so that you're saying there's a correlation between both?
Well, yeah, we spend over 50% of our federal funding on military spending, whereas Denmark, it's pretty much zero, along with Great Britain and other countries around there that essentially don't have a military funded because they depend on the United States to protect them.
Okay.
All right,
Oh, I
so
see what you're saying. Yeah.
so we're gonna move over to Cory Booker. Um,
Okay.
Cory Booker, I know you're a big fanboy when it comes to him, and
I
I'm
mean,
not judging you. I'm not
I'll
judging you.
explain. I'll explain.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Just
but
a little.
he says he supports a single-payer healthcare plan. He claims he wants to stick it to like insurance companies and make it more affordable to Americans. But just last year, he fought against a bill that was sponsored by Bernie Sanders that would have allowed Americans to buy prescription drugs from Canada. It was only him and 12 other Democrats that went against it. Part of the reason is he is sponsored by big pharma companies. The hard
Right.
left, like Fox and Salon, have attacked Booker for being in the pocket of like Wall Street and everything. So I've always came to the conclusion that he was pretty far left, but now the Democrats are kind of pushing out that he's actually very moderate. So I personally, for me, I don't know how to feel about Cory Booker if he's a moderate or a leftist. So
Sure.
what about Cory Booker has you so fascinated by him?
Okay. So where do I start? Okay. So yes, that's kind of been a little bit of the struggle that I have with Cory Booker. You are right. He's been small. He's been kind of a Wall Street bestie for them for some time, but he actually did make an announcement that if he did run for president, he actually wouldn't have had the same, Cory Booker ideal that he does now. But anyways, that's not the point. So reason why, so from the stance and the perspective of why I would support a Cory Booker for president for the Democrats to go against Trump is because I think he is the best when it comes to looking at the other candidates. Because okay, let me rephrase this. So when I say Cory Booker is the best candidate, I'm just saying he's the best candidate for the Democrats as of now. I'm not saying he's the best Democratic president in the United States. If there are other Democrats that run, they should run. But it was anticipated that he might run. So that's why I think he's the best. So comparing him to Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, Kristen Gillibrand, who actually thought
Pretty
about
low
not
bar.
running. So,
Okay.
huh?
So it's a pretty low bar to set.
Yeah, see that's why I do support him a little bit more. But of course I do have reasons of why I support him. I'm not just saying I support him because he has a cool shiny bald head. There's more to it than that. But I do agree with him on certain issues. And Darian, you agree with him on certain issues too. I mean, but yeah. But regardless, I look at him, Bernie Sanders saying he might run. Joe Biden, that's his name. Yeah, Joe Biden might run. Kristen, what's her name? Kamala Harris might run. When I researched all these candidates and knowing more about these candidates, what really stood out to me the most when it came to charisma, when it came to being very, very sound, becoming much more moderate than many of those Democrats, is Cory Booker. So a lot of the reasons why I did like Cory Booker primarily is because of him being moderate. And I do have other reasons of what I could say later on, because if I feel like if I say it all now, then I could keep going on and on. So
Did you like
See, the thing is, he's not moderate though. Especially when you look at the reality is the Democratic Party has shifted so far left. It's just crazy. Booker, he's not a moderate by any means. Just because he's more slightly to the right of Elizabeth Warren or Bernie Sanders, that really it doesn't mean much, and it doesn't make him a moderate. For example, in a recent bill that was voted on in Congress, which all the Democrats voted no on, by the way, there was a bill that was asking for if women should be allowed to have an at convenience abortion at 20 weeks, which is 5 months. And all the Democrats voted against it, or sorry, I can't remember.
For it. Yeah. It's Democrats we're talking about.
The Democrats voted for abortion to be allowed at 5 months at convenience, which is insanely immoral and disgusting. And that bill actually had exceptions for incest or threat to the life of the mother, rape, etc. Which, even then at 5 months, it's a long time span. He totally voted against that. And, someone like that, I find that to be just terrible. And I wouldn't call someone a moderate when they're voting that kind of way on bills.
But that's only one issue, man.
Okay, and you're right. That is only one issue, and there are other.
I'm saying he's more moderate compared to the candidates that he would be running against. He's moderate compared to Bernie Sanders, who was much more leftist than what we would ever think.
Isn't that couldn't I say like, oh, well, this guy's good because he's moderate compared to Hitler? Like what does that mean? That doesn't make him a good candidate.
That's a false comparison, man.
It's not though. You can easily be moderate compared to some kind of evil. It doesn't make you inherently good.
But he has been fairly successful for his state of New Jersey as well.
Okay, how has he been successful?
How's that being successful?
No, how has he been? That's what I'm asking you.
Oh, okay. So, I was able to research, and because I think to really be a good president, of course, is to have certain accomplishments in the past. So Newark, he was the mayor of Newark from 2006 to 2010, a little bit over, I have to remember, but around that time. Crime in Newark was one of the worst before he actually became the mayor. It was one of the worst. So he made a pledge and a promise to stop or essentially reduce crime, because he can't stop crime there. No one can.
Yeah,
it's impossible. When he came, there was a correlation between him being mayor from 2006 to 2008, and crime dropped significantly when he was. So I would say that seems apparent as an
I have a couple questions there. How much did it drop? One, because significantly could mean anything. One, how much did it drop? And two, what did he do to drop it?
Okay. Well, first and foremost, he was able to he signed a bill that actually had more police officers out on the street to investigate criminal activity. He actually signed a bill that did that. Okay. So a lot of it has to do with
the bill myself, but in theory, it sounds good. I generally do believe that we should police communities more that have more crime. So
yeah, he's been a supporter of law enforcement for. Yeah. So yeah, he signed a bill that actually had more police officers, out on the streets investigating crime. The other thing that he did was, and I mean, it's not really policy, but I think it's a good representation of him being mayor. But he would literally go out at 4 a.m. This is just kind of a side story. He would literally go out 4 a.m. with other police officers and everything, and they would literally go out and control areas that are like known to be high criminal areas. And there was a correlation between him starting out the first time, him being mayor, with it being very dangerous, to now, or at the time now, not being nearly as dangerous. So
Okay, but
him,
are you
yeah.
aware though that crime rates have been dropping across the board throughout the United States uniformly for the past 50 years? So how much of that was with the Cory Booker, and how much of it was just a consistent drop in crime rate?
Well, I feel like policy would have something. Well, couldn't policy have something to do with it at all? It can't just happen naturally,
Well, it
right?
has been happening naturally in the United States, so it can.
But we're specifically talking about an area that has been bad for years and years and years.
Uh-huh.
From the late 1990s to what is it? Late 1990s to early 2000s, Newark was actually one of the most dangerous cities in the country. It was ranked up there. When he became mayor, crime actually dropped.
That
So
doesn't.
I don't
Okay,
like to just think it happened naturally.
becoming mayor doesn't necessarily mean that crime dropped. That's what I'm saying. You have to show me a demonstrable evidence that he actually did something to change it. That's what I'm saying.
I mean, couldn't I just say that about any other political candidate? So, for instance,
Yeah, sure.
if an economy was doing better under Mitt Romney when he was the governor of Massachusetts, can I ask you? So, what did Mitt Romney do specifically to help Massachusetts economy?
Yeah, you can.
That's the same kind of basic
I don't
logic.
necessarily agree that just because the economy becomes good after a president goes in office that they caused it. That's not always the case. So yes, you can ask
So,
that.
what other factors would there be for Newark's crime to be less than
Economic
what it was
cycles. Generally, there's peaks, troughs, and recessions within any economic cycle that a president can't control.
But Newark has been dangerous for a consistent. It's been dangerous.
Well, no, it hasn't been. It's been just much like the rest of the United States. Crime has been consistently dropping across the board in the United States.
But so okay, so are you saying that if Cory Booker was not mayor for the city of Newark, then crime would have been better?
I don't know. I'm just saying I need evidence to show that he's done something, and I haven't seen that. That's what I'm saying.
His policy. I just said his policy. More higher enforcement. Higher enforcement. He was able to. He was a very communal kind of person. So he would go out and start events with other people, bring the citizens of Newark together, play games, have
okay,
I guess
so
fun moments with each other.
Is, correct me if I'm wrong, you're saying more increased law enforcement is a good thing, right? And you like Booker for that.
I mean, he did. It seems reasonable that it.
Okay,
it
so are you aware that?
And then crime actually climbed after he. Okay, so I will say this quickly: crime did drop under him, but when Governor Christie actually became governor, crime actually went up again. So I'm not going to say it was Christie. Okay, I mean you don't have to believe. Okay, so I'm just saying. I'm just specifically talking about Newark. I'm talking about Newark. I'm not talking about.
And then okay, now do you want me to talk about you said
Newark?
Earlier you said that it's just. God damn it! I'm sorry.
Here, Darian, take care of that. I'll talk real quick. I think it's very difficult to say if we had two parallel worlds where Cory Booker's the mayor for a period of time, and in another world where he's not the mayor, would crime have diverged? Would it had gone down much quicker, lower, or would it have stayed the same? It's really hard to talk in that hypothetical sense. Yes, he is right that overall across the country crime has gone down. You have specific laws put into place where he enforced crime a little bit differently than his predecessors. So I mean, it's kind of doesn't really move the goalpost a little too much. Hasn't he been sued though for hiring discrimination?
Hiring? Wait, Cory Booker?
Cory Booker. So when you had a lot of the riots that were going on for like Black Lives Matter, I guess there was a lot of cases where black men were assaulted in Newark, and the police had been charged with discrimination for those assaults. He's kind of pandered towards Black Lives Matter and kind of gone after the police for their enforcement of the law. Do you know anything about that? Do you have an opinion on that at all?
I mean, I didn't. Not necessarily. I didn't hear too much about that. Can you provide just a little bit more of an analysis of?
Well, I mean, I'm talking generally because the one that comes to mind is actually in Baltimore when you had I forgot the guy's name, but what happened was they had pulled over a guy who was selling cigarettes to people passing by, and the police had confronted him, and the guy pretty much freaked out and assaulted the police, and they tackled him, they attacked him, and they were trying to arrest him, and during the process of arresting him, he died. So
Oh, was it the yes, I know who you're talking about. He was like the really big guy.
yeah, he was like really
Eric
muscular,
Garner.
really buff, and I guess he had like a panic
Yeah, yeah,
attack or
yeah,
an
yeah.
anxiety
I
attack.
think that's how Black Lives no, no, no. I think Black Lives Matter actually came apart after Trayvon
Real
Martin.
quick, guys. Sorry, just we're
Anyways,
getting a little off
yeah,
topic here, but if I can
sure.
talk about more
Yeah.
reasons why I don't like Booker, if you'd like.
Well, first answer that question first, like, cause like I know
Good
Cory Booker
question.
was very sympathetic towards Black Lives Matter after that had happened in
Yeah.
Baltimore, and there were other instances like that in his city, and so my concern is like he's kind of the person that panders towards race
Yeah.
politics a little too much,
Identity, you
Absolutely.
would say?
identity
He's a
politics.
supporter of affirmative action too, which is a very racist policy, which actively encourages the discrimination of people on the basis of skin color, and has objectively been shown through studies to hurt minorities it benefits, such as African Americans, because they're more likely to be put into situations that they're not equipped to deal with in terms of schooling. And because like there's a study that showed that African Americans are twice as likely to be derailed from pursuing a postgraduate education. Uh, Black students who've been placed into programs because of affirmative action.
Right.
So he's not only supporting a policy that's bad and doesn't work, it actively encourages racism, and it's harmful towards white people and especially Asian people.
Okay. But
And I don't believe in having racists in our office. So, yeah,
wait, you're saying Cory Booker's racist?
I think it is racist to support a policy that involves discriminating people on the basis of skin color. So, in that effect, yes, I think he
Sure.
is racist.
Well, okay. I mean, I think it's a little bit sure. I mean,
Why is it?
yes.
Why is that not racist?
Okay. No, no, no. Oh, I agree with you. I do think I am against affirmative action myself, but I don't want to go to the basis of one particular issue to say, okay, he supports affirmative action. Therefore, Cory
Well,
Booker is not on my list at all.
others too.
Issues as
Keep saying one
easy
issue. I
as this
have
might sound
multiple
to you.
issues with him that I don't have that I have problems with him on.
What's up?
You keep saying it's one issue. It's not one issue. There are multiple issues is that I have huge problems with him on, and that's
Sure.
why.
Affirmative action. Yeah, yeah, yeah. What? You said other one.
Sorry,
What
finish
were
your
the other
thought. I
ones?
just wanted to interject and say that, but go ahead.
Sure. So, okay. So when I say, okay, I'll say this again. When I say that who I would think would be good enough against President Trump in 2020, because we know Trump is running for re-election and we know he's going to be the Republican front runner for 2020. Out of all the Democrats that have thought about running, you got your Warren, you got your Bernie Sanders, you got your Cory Booker. I would say Cory Booker would be the best out of all of them. I'm not trying to say he's the best of the best. He's the greatest Democrat that's living in this in the current society
Okay,
now.
would you rather have him or Trump as president?
I would rather have Booker.
Oh.
Are you kidding?
Oh,
Yes.
now we found the root of the issue.
Yes, I would. Oh man, I'm sorry. Okay, I'll tell you some reasons. Okay.
So, the quick question here. So, would you
Sure.
say Cory Booker is a racist for supporting affirmative action? Yes or no?
Would I say he's racist?
Yes, for his support of affirmative action.
I mean, okay.
It's a yes or no
Politicians.
question.
No. Politicians usually say they support certain issues, but you kind of have to question if they really do support it or not. So, okay, I'm just saying this as a hypothetical. Maybe Cory Booker isn't. Maybe okay. Let's just say okay, he's for affirmative action. You know, he's for certain policies, but you have to know that that's what his party expects of him to do. If he's
So,
not for any
that
of
makes
that,
it
then he
okay?
wouldn't be a candidate, huh?
That
That's
makes
politics.
it okay. So it's okay to be aborting babies at 5 months because his party expects it of him. There
Oh
were three
my
Democrats who voted against that abortion bill
You
for
said
the
all of
5 month
them, or
abortion bill. And
yeah,
they're Democrats, and their party expected them to vote in a different way, but they still did what was right in their views. So why do you give Cory Booker the pass?
because
And you
he's.
didn't answer. It's a yes, no question. Do you think it's racist that he supports affirmative action? Yes or no?
I mean, from the way he says it, I wouldn't say. I wouldn't say not really because for him to be racist is for him to start like criticize. I would say the Asian population more or white people more. I would say.
So
I
what
wouldn't
about actively
say
helping pass policy that hurts them?
explicitly racist. I think that's ridiculous for you to say.
What about actively pushing institutional racism on the American people?
Wait, say it again.
You think that's better? Say, what about he actively pushes a policy that's institutionally racist against people in the United States? So you're saying that is better than
No.
criticizing Asian people? Well, that's what he's doing. And here, no, let me ask you another question. So you're saying
what I'm
no,
saying
not
for
racist,
him to truly be
bullshit.
racist, for him to truly be racist is for him to propel this idea that sure, he supports affirmative action, and I know if you support it, then you would say it's racist. So
Okay,
so are
let
you
me ask you this.
okay? Let me ask you
Donald
this:
Trump,
Are you
our
saying that
current
all
president.
Democrats or most Democrats are racist? Then
Yes.
I'm saying people who push policies such as affirmative action and want it to be passed in legislation are racist. Yes, I do believe that. And let me
sure,
ask you this: if
yeah,
Donald Trump passed a policy that involved actively discriminating against people for their skin color, if it, let's say,
people would say it's
because
racist.
this
Yeah.
happens in modern day, so let's say Donald Trump had a policy passed for colleges that allowed them to discriminate against someone for being black or Latino and gave them less of a priority and gave whites a priority over them in admissions. Do you think Donald Trump would be a racist for passing that?
I mean, I know the leftist media would absolutely begrudge on that
I'm
idea.
asking you, is that a yes or no? Do you think Trump would be racist if he did that?
Okay, maybe
If he
politically,
literally
I would say
racist against
it
blacks and
seems it
Latinos?
would seem apparent maybe, but as a person, absolutely not. I mean, not
You don't think that's
necessarily.
racist?
Okay,
If it literally
that's
made it
literally. I think that's
harder for
kind of
blacks and
equivalent to
Latinos to get
saying that if
college,
you're pro-choice, then you're for murder. Couldn't you just say, well, you support murder with that kind of like idea that you
no, this
have?
has nothing to do with abortion. This is institutional racism against
But
people of a
you're
certain skin
making it an
color.
extreme. You're saying that if someone supports affirmative action, then they're automatically racist entirely.
It's not an extreme. I'm asking you a question. You're not answering.
It
It's
is
not an extreme. I'm saying if Trump passed a policy that literally made it more difficult for blacks and Latino people to get into college, do you think that'd be a racist policy to pass?
Would that be a racist policy?
And would it make him a racist?
I mean, that's not necessarily. I not really.
That's by definition institutional racism. How is that not racist?
I mean, I don't like to think. Okay, so I know what affirmative because like I said, I oppose affirmative action like you guys. Like, well, Darian, because
Mm-hmm.
that's who I'm discussing with. But but okay, sure. If I did say it's racist, yes, it's racist. But
Okay, and why
with
is the
that
reverse not
logic,
true with
you're
Cory
essentially
Booker
saying
and
that
people of other skin
no
color?
Democrats should run for president because they're all racist.
No, but
I
at
mean,
least
that just
Trump
sounds
doesn't feel that way.
No, I'm not saying no Democrat should run for president. They're free to do so. I just don't support him.
yeah, okay, yeah, I understand that.
Yeah.
And I know that you disagree with him a lot. And I'll be frank with you, I disagree with him too. I think I supported the Republican bill that would have banned
Tony, you're
abortion
dodging my
opportunities.
question.
Okay, wait, is it the same question about affirmative action?
Yeah, why? So you said Trump would be racist if he passed an institutionally racist policy against blacks and Latino people. I would agree with that, and you agree with that too. So why is the reverse not true with Cory Booker doing it to whites and Asian people, white and Asian people?
With white and Asian people. I mean, so you're saying okay, so you're saying it's racist on the grounds that it's helping one group because of their race entirely and saying screw the other race entirely. So that's what makes it racist.
Absolutely, yeah.
It seems so. Yeah, it seems so.
So
It seems
I
so.
don't want a racist in office.
I don't think he's explicitly racist, though. I think for him to
Well, you're
truly
right.
be
You're right.
racist,
He's not
usually
explicitly racist.
it
He's
takes
said
much
racist
more than
things
just
like
affirmative
actually
action.
Well,
Like
Tony,
but
for
in
him to
reality,
for him to truly say I hate white people, I think white people are the worst, or those freaking Asians, man, they're too yellow for me. Like if he
well,
made those kind of comments, I would believe
so comments are
by
more
him
important
being
than something that
explicit.
affects people in society institutionally.
But that's just what Democrats support. I mean, if
well,
you want
right,
to say they're
Tony.
racist,
Okay, I
Tony,
mean,
but that's what
you
Democrats
like
if
support,
you
though. So why would you vote for a Democrat over a Republican who doesn't think that way?
yeah, exactly. I mean, like I could say, like oh, like
sure.
I hate to bring it into it, but you could just say like I know this is an extreme, like so I'm going to put that out there, but you could just say, well, that's just what Nazis support. I mean, like, what are you going to do? So he's the best of the Nazis. It doesn't that's not a that's not a valid argument. That doesn't hold water with me.
Right. I see. I
And
see
also, and
why.
we'll go on more with Cory Booker. He supports policies that hurt poor people. He voted against the Republican tax bill, which lowered taxes on 80% of the American people. And from my understanding from earlier, you believe in helping out the poor people of America. Well, why would you want someone like Cory Booker in office who's going to hurt poor people and raise taxes on them?
I mean, that's not the full story, though, buddy. You have to realize
Why is that
that
not the whole story?
because it cut taxes for the rich as well, and he's been very, very, He's been
So
he's been very apparent to
what's
say
wrong
that
with
he
cutting
wants to
taxes
raise
on the rich?
taxes on the rich.
What's wrong
So
with
when you
cutting
cut
taxes on
taxes
everyone?
on the rich, he's not going to support that bill. It's kind of
Why?
obvious.
Wait, hold on,
What's
guys.
wrong with cutting taxes
Guys, hold on.
on
Well, let me
okay.
cut in real quick. We are at an
Okay.
hour right now,
Okay.
so if you guys are
Oh
good,
my gosh.
Oh
we,
yeah.
we could go further if you're both down for it.
Okay. All right. So I'll just say these last few points about Cory Booker. Just these last points. So when I look at a presidential candidate, I like I would like looking at Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren running against Trump. They're a little bit too old, in my opinion. I like to think that we should draw the line in America to say that to have someone that runs as a very, very old candidate and that could possibly have problems with health later on in their life, it'd be kind of tough for them to run. So that's why I support Cory Booker in that sense, because Cory Booker is only 49 years old. You have Elizabeth Warren, she's going to turn 70. Bernie Sanders, he's probably been there since the early 1900s protesting, because that's what he does. Like, he's been around for a very, very long time. So for those specific candidates, if they become president, and I know you guys would say, God forbid that, but if they did become presidents, who knows what could happen to their health later on in their life. So that's why I support Cory Booker, because he's 49 years old, he's relatively young, and he takes care of his body very well. I know that he's also been a vegetarian ever since the
So was
90s,
Hitler.
and I know that is. I know. I'm not trying to say vegan is life and everything, but he does take care of himself very, very well. So I think that to have someone as president, you have to really have someone that is, it should be relatively young, because they're less susceptible, if you exclude like genetical issues, but they're less susceptible of getting health complications later on. Like, for example, not Mitt Romney, Ronald Reagan, when he was president in his second term, the last few years before he stopped becoming president because his term would have been over, he actually had Alzheimer's disease.
He was also shot too.
But
no, but I mean, all those health issues came as a result of
yes, I know
shot.
he was. Yes, he was shot. I wish that never happened. Oh my goodness, I wish that never happened. But I'm just saying that having older candidates, okay, regardless, okay, what does being shot have to do with it?
Well, because
I mean,
he had a lot of health issues as a result of being shot, and we don't know if it had it has a physical part, but it also has a mental part with it, and it probably exacerbated his Alzheimer's and sped it up. If he hadn't been shot, maybe it wouldn't have shown up as early as it did, but it did play a role in it.
I mean, where did he get shot, might I ask?
He was shot through the abdomen. He was shot in I think 3 different places: his chest, the abdomen, and he broke his hip through it too.
Ooh, that's harsh.
Well, part of it was being thrown into the back of the car. I think that's what actually broke this hip. But I mean, when you have 2 bullet holes, 3 bullet holes, and then a broken hip, yeah, it's not really like the most optimal way of being injured.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that sounds really harsh.
Darian, I mean, yes, do you want to make one last point, and then we can move to gun control, or we could end the debate? It's up to you guys.
I'd say we keep going.
Right.
But yeah, sure. Last point. Yeah, I don't like Cory Booker. I don't think he's a moderate, even if he's more to the right of Bernie Sanders or Elizabeth Warren, who are both extremely far left. He supports affirmative action. It's a racist policy. He supports convenient abortions at 5 months of pregnancy. He voted against the Republican tax bill, which lowered taxes on 80% of Americans. I just don't see a benefit that he'd bring to the American people. And for that reason, I don't support him.
He supported the Iran deal, by the way. He opposes the war on drugs. He believes in liberalism. He co-sponsored an act with Rand Paul called the Redeem Act, which essentially liberalizes crime more. So if you committed a non-offensive violent crime, then you can have that expunged out of your records. But I just wanted to say quickly, you don't have too many Democrats wanting to co-sponsor bills with Republicans. So that's, I just wanted to say that quickly. Fair. He supports the Iran deal, especially, by the way, Darian. That one's for you, Brent. Okay. Anyways, we can move on.
Yes, okay, so I'm going to share a picture with the audience, and I don't know if I can show it on your end, but let me describe what the image is that I'm sharing. It's a picture of the United States that has part of it cut out that's comparable to Australia. Same landmass, same population of 23 million, both of them being 94% white. The only difference between Australia and this section of the United States with Wyoming, Utah, North Dakota is that Australia has 430 homicides with 0% gun ownership, while the United States has 376 homicides with 47% gun ownership. So my question is gun ownership an issue for regulations in that it's too lenient or too much, or does this actually have more to do with culture?
Not well. Culture does play a huge part in the situation, but I think that wouldn't I would believe that having higher gun ownership could possibly lead to higher gun crime of actually occurring
But I mean,
in that case.
Australia has no gun
With
ownership.
yeah, you're saying no people had weapons, yet there was a higher homicidal rate,
Right,
right?
right. So this portion of the United States, which Montana, North Dakota, South Dakota, this part of the United States, doesn't have the same gun problems as the inner cities do with like New York or LA or San Francisco. So my point is, does it have more to do with culture than it does with gun ownership?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. When you look at gun ownership in the United States, for example, violent crime has been trending downwards for the past 50 years, and gun ownership has sharply been increasing for the last 50 years. So it really shows there's zero evidence to suggest that having guns legal and gun ownership high in place in the U.S. results in more gun crime. There are more guns than people in this country. There are recent estimates show that there are about 425 million guns in
Yes,
the
there's
United
a lot.
States, which is more than the amount of people we have. So that's one factor to consider. What else? I was going to say something else, and I lost my train of thought. In one moment.
Well, let's talk about regulation. Tony,
Sure.
I mean, what's your opinion? Should people be allowed to own weapons?
Yes,
Okay,
absolutely.
so you agree with the Second
So
Amendment
when I say I'm a supporter of gun control, I'm not the type to say let's repeal the Second Amendment. We shouldn't have anything like that. No, I think that for people to own guns, they should have to wait a little bit longer to get the guns that they need. I absolutely do believe in gun ownership. I think if you're qualified mentally, if you're mentally stable to actually own a gun, then yes, you have every right to own a gun. But I think that there should be a little bit more limitations for who can have a gun. Like, for example, uh, Trump actually, I don't know if you remember this, you probably do remember this going on, but Trump actually kind of snapped at one of the NRA directors saying that how in the world can you be 18 years old and have the right to own an assault rifle, but when you're 21 years old, you can get a firearm and you're eligible for that. So in my humble opinion, and the opinions for many people that probably do support gun control, they just think it's very outlandish to have that be a part of our law. So when we say we want more gun control, instead of having it to where you're 18 and you can own an assault rifle, why not push it back a little bit to 21? Like what harm could that cause? We're not taking guns away. We're just
you can't own an assault rifle at 18. That's not true. No one can in the United States. In fact, assault rifles are fully automatic guns and they're heavily regulated, and pretty much nobody in the U.S. can legally own them without extreme measures going through the government stuff. Also, what benefit does raising the age of 21 do to 18?
What about the soldiers? I mean, we have 18-year-olds joining the
military.
military.
Do you think people shouldn't be able to go and fight in a United States war at 18?
Well, okay. And in the case of that, specifically for gun ownership, that's definitely a different situation.
What about voting?
Entirely.
I mean, if we allow 18-year-olds to vote, but they're not allowed to own a weapon until they're 21, maybe we should push back the age of voting also.
Well, not necessarily though.
Because in the Constitution,
it's like apples and oranges.
No, because in the Constitution, owning a weapon is a right. So when do we say that you, as an adult, now have the same rights as everyone else? In the Constitution, we've kind of put that at 18. But if you're going to say that, well, some rights you get at 21, other rights you get at 18, I have an issue with that.
So you're essentially saying that if we're going to extend it to 21, then
what benefit would we have from raising the firearm ownership age to 21 as opposed to 18?
Well, it would be. I think there is certain reasons for that.
Okay.
Well, the person who's 18 isn't going to be as maybe understanding or mature to know maybe more about the laws until they're 21. So what I'm trying to say is over time, people will know. Yeah, people could possibly know more about guns and about the variety of laws that pertain to guns, more so if they're 21 and 18. So essentially, what I'm saying
Okay,
that over
so
time,
should we
someone
raise the
becomes
driving
more
age to 21?
intellectual.
They'll
What's up?
know more. Should we raise the driving age to 21? They'll know more about the laws of driving by the time they're 21, right? So why don't we raise the driving age to 21?
But that's different. But
Why is that different?
that is far different though.
Why?
Driving's not a right.
Because
How's that different?
driving's not a right.
No, it's not.
Well,
It's a privilege.
driving. Okay, so driving is much more imperative for the lives of a specific individual than I would say guns. Though we need our cars much more in our hands and in our grasp.
Have
You don't need
people
a car,
not
you can
used?
use a bike.
Wait, hold on. Have people not used cars to inflict murder on others?
Yeah, I was gonna say
Yes. Yeah. Of course.
So
And don't worry, I'm not. Okay, I think you're making it seem as though we should ban guns entirely. I never said that.
no.
I'm just saying,
don't
what
say that.
harm could there be if we just extended it to
my
21
problem is,
as
it's
the
like
basis of a law?
my problem is it's already illegal for a 16-year-old to own a gun, but that doesn't stop them from going to a high school and shooting up the place. When you're going to be increasing the age from lawful citizens from 18 to 21, you're taking guns away from lawful citizens.
Also, sorry, can you please explain? I don't see the logic in, well, I don't think it'd be that much of a harm anyway, so let's just do it with policy. Why would you do that? That doesn't make sense to me.
I mean, I already explained that they would become more developed cognitively, intellectually, if they're 21 than if they're 18. So they know much more about the laws.
Okay,
Of the
same thing with
country.
cars. Like I don't, and both are
So-
deadly weapons
Voting.
that can death on other people. I don't see the difference.
I think cognitively, voting's a lot more important because if you're 18 and your brain's not quite functioned the way it's supposed to be, yeah, we should push it off to 28 then.
But I'm speaking in terms of something that could cause a potential risk. Like voting, I guess voting can cause a risk because someone that runs for office might be dangerous, and these people are voting for them anyway.
Right.
But a gun has the potential of being much more dangerous than voting
So is
could
a
ever
hammer.
be.
So is a knife.
In the case of
Cars can be very dangerous.
okay,
Far more people die from cars every year than guns, by a huge margin, especially people of the age of 18.
well, you have to take into account drunk driving. You have to take into account what did they take for them to actually
Okay,
cause.
so there's still deaths. Like, does that
Sure,
make them
sure.
not valid? I don't understand. So yeah, you drunk driving. That's an example of an 18-year-old
But-
doing stupid things.
But cars, but
Getting
in
drunk
the essence of
someone.
driving in cars, that's not meant by definition to be close to a hazard compared to guns.
What?
That's why we
I don't understand what you're
much
saying.
more of a controversy
Both are
with
a hazard.
guns
They kill people.
than cars. Huh?
Both are a hazard. People die from them.
Sure, both. I'm not trying to say cars aren't a hazard at all, but the apparent understanding of what it takes for us to drive cars going to wherever we need to go in terms of transportation, we don't nearly associate ourselves driving to danger as
But-
much as what
You know
guns
what-
can
wait,
do.
Tony,
with-
that's-
Guns are actually very necessary.
But hold on.
Sure, I'm not saying they're not necessary.
Well, you're
If someone
saying
breaks
that
into your house, I do believe in
fine, but
castle
they're
law.
not
You should have the right to
necessary,
shoot
so
them
it's okay to
they're
limit
posing a
the use
threat
of
to
them
you.
if they are.
Wait,
Sorry.
I've got a question for both of you because that sounds like an argument about like accidental death through a firearm. That people don't know how to use their weapons. It goes off, it accidentally shoots someone, kills someone. Okay, that's one part of the problem. But in fact, the majority of firearm deaths are from criminals who are inflicting murder on other people who are trying to rob them or kill them. These are people who have an ill intent to begin with. So again, any kind of legislation that you're talking about affects the people who are already abiding by the law legally. The ones,
Well, I do want to.
But they're going to be able to get. They'll be able to get their guns.
yeah, but the 16-year-olds who
Already.
shoot up a
majority
high
of
school,
farm deaths
they'll
are
do it
suicides,
illegal
not
anyway.
homicides. Just want to throw that out there.
Say it again.
The majority of farm deaths are suicides, not homicides. 2/3 are suicides.
Yes.
I just want to mention that.
Yeah.
But my point is, like a 16-year-old who's going to shoot up a school got the gun illegally anyway.
Oh yeah, absolutely, I agree.
Right. Yeah.
No
Well,
gun.
what I'm trying to say is okay, because I can understand from the basis that you might think that having more laws in place means that less people will be able to get guns. Like the law-abiding citizens will be able to get guns. But the
Yeah.
extreme case is when people think that all your guns are going to be taken away and everything.
Well, for most,
It's more so like a just-in-case kind of law. And what I mean is, sure, criminals that get access into guns to
So we're going to limit constitutional rights just in case.
say it again.
We're going to limit constitutional rights because just in case.
Well, you're still going to have your constitutional law anyway.
No, it's being
I'm not
violated.
saying Your Second
I'm not.
Amendment will still
I'm
be
not
active
21
in
years
your
old.
hand.
You're saying I should legally not be able to buy a gun. And so you're saying I should lose my constitutional right as an adult in the United States.
So in Australia, this is how it started. They started with comprehensive gun control for small things like rolling back the age of when you can own a firearm. Um,
Mm-hmm.
then they started restricting the caliber of weapons, where, well, your capacity of holding 12 rounds versus 9 rounds, we can't have that. We want you to limit it. And it wasn't with the intent of protecting lives or taking guns away from the criminals. It was all an effort to eventually get to a point where they could do a total gun grab altogether. So
What? Okay. So
that's
you're
our
saying that
fear
it could
on the right.
cascade,
Yes,
like when
absolutely.
there's restrict.
Exactly. Not only that, not to mention that it was actually shown that violent crime had no. The gun ban in Australia, the blanket gun ban they did, had essentially no effect on violent crime in the country at all. It was already trending downwards consistently, and after all guns were banned, violent crime still trended downwards consistently. So there's actually no evidence that a gun ban like
There
that
was
would
another
work.
source I read that was not what you're
Let's
describing,
see your
man.
source. I'd love to see it because it was
No,
already decrease. It was already trending at a decrease before the gun ban, and after the gun ban, the exact same thing happened. So there was zero difference. You can also see the same simple examples in the United States. If you look at Chicago, they have some of the strictest gun laws in the country, but they have by far per capita the most gun deaths in the country. And you know, everyone knows Chicago is just a crazy place right now. Meanwhile, there are other states surrounding Chicago that have extremely high rates of gun ownership, such as Vermont, for example, which has essentially zero gun control, where even a convicted felon can buy a gun in Vermont. Not that I agree with that, but the federal background check stops that anyways. But there are about two to three deaths by gun homicides a year in Vermont, and everyone is allowed to buy a gun there at 18, without really anything other than a background check, federal background check. It's very easy.
right.
And
I see
so
what you're saying.
there's no evidence to show that limiting the age to buy guns to put it from 18 to 21 is suddenly going to change anything.
But
There's no demonstrable evidence to show that that would work.
okay, so with some of the current laws that we have, because I know laws do there's a lot of complications that come within the law itself, but some of the school shooters, from what I was able to read, weren't the same ones that actually were able to get a gun from their father or from another source and shoot down the school. Some of them actually brought a gun to school because it was actually their gun and they were eligible for that gun. So I'm trying to think, isn't it sensible to have more gun restrictions for that not to happen? Sure, they might be mental. Sure, it seems like
Well, no, because they would have done
impedes them from not getting a gun, but who knows what could happen? They
They could have. Okay, well,
they
look at
could still get the
Chicago.
gun anyway from
Chicago,
the gun
all
shop.
those guns are bought off the black market, so it's very clear that it's very easy to get along illegally and still shoot people with that. Or if you're thinking of Nicholas Cruz, for example, yes, he did buy that gun legally, but that was because of government incompetence. The FBI visited his house on over 30 separate occasions, and due to a lot of issues that he was
But that's
having.
unrelated. No, that is unrelated though,
Why is that
Darian.
unrelated? You're
He
talking
was
about
still able to get the gun, and he was
exactly.
mentally handicapped. So isn't that kind of an indication that you need some sort of laws in place just in case of things like that won't happen?
Let me finish my point. By
Sure.
the current laws in the United States, the FBI should have reported him and barred him from getting guns, but they didn't do that, and that was solely due to government incompetence. And what is government restrictions? What do restrictions on guns do? They give the government more power. The already incompetent government that can't even protect its own people.
So are you okay with the current
No gun law,
that we
no
have?
gun law or increased gun control ever would have stopped Nicholas Cruz from doing what he did because the FBI was too incompetent to do anything anyways.
So you're not saying the manufacturer had anything to do with him getting the gun because he's the one who sold it to him, and you would think that there would be an indication that there was something wrong with
bought
it.
it from a gun store. I don't understand. Should we ban gun stores? Like, I don't get. What do you want?
No,
It's the retailer that sold it, not the manufacturer.
Yeah, and the manufacturer couldn't do anything about it. It's not their.
Or the retailer. That's what I meant though. That's what I meant.
Well, I know Clinton in particular wanted to go after the gun manufacturer. So when someone uses a Colt gun and shoots up the place, Colt would be liable for the damages.
Yeah, I mean,
that is insane.
I personally am not for that myself. I don't think the manufacturer really does have too much to do with most purchases of a weapon. So if someone does kill someone with a weapon, you shouldn't be able to sue a manufacturer. If that's what you're
on the retail aspect, though. If you go,
he was still able to get the gun anyway.
But hold on, if you go to a car dealership and you buy a Honda, Santan Honda shouldn't be held liable if I get a DUI and I end up, slamming into a school bus. That should be my fault as the user of the car, not Santan Honda.
Absolutely.
Yeah, no, I agree with you on that though.
Oh,
I
I
do.
thought you said the retailer then should have been held liable.
No, I'm not saying they should have been held liable, but no, I'm not saying that they should have gotten sued or anything of that matter.
Okay.
But what I'm trying to say is he was still able to get the gun from the retailer. So that should tell us, that should give us an indication that, okay, there's probably something that's a little bit too lax about the laws, because you have Nicholas Cruz, this freaking terrorist that was able to get a gun and shoot all those people. And he was able to get it from his own means. And there was something mentally wrong with him. He was still able to get the gun.
Explain to me what law could have been passed that would have stopped Nicholas Cruz from shooting up that school in Florida.
Longer waiting time. What's wrong with waiting maybe 2 more weeks to really understand the person getting the gun, then getting the gun?
He planned to kill people for months. Why would a longer waiting time stop him? This is a planned out school shooting. He was a sick, mentally disturbed.
More psychological testing, more to really know who this guy really is.
So when Democrats
and the FBI could have done it. The FBI.
I mean, there's nothing wrong with that, because if you're an able-bodied citizen, you're going to pass all those tests. You're going to pass all those tests. They're not going to say this guy is mentally unstable. He's going to get his guns anyway. Your Second Amendment will be right in your lap. But for the ones that do have mental instability, doesn't seem like there's much of enforcement in that, and they're able to get guns. So I'm saying more psychological testing in a longer waiting time. What's wrong with that? There's nothing wrong with having that in place. You're still going to get your guns. Don't worry. We're not taking all of it.
When this has been proposed in like California, what happened was anyone who had like PTSD from the military would have been disqualified from owning a firearm because they wouldn't pass the psychological eval. So we have to be very careful when we start opening the gate for, yeah, it makes common sense. Let's do a psych eval. What ends up happening is it's going to start, applying to more different categories of what is.
And not only that, but people who want treatment are not going to seek it because they are afraid of society and the government going against them and taking away their rights because of that when they seek treatment for mental illness. So that's another huge issue to think about. Also, that people can get stuff legally anyways if they really want to. So in another world, let's say the age was 21 or something, Nicholas Cruz would just go buy it illegally. Then he'd shoot up the place. And if he was afraid that if he went and tried to get legal help for what a messed up individual he was, he wouldn't do it, because why would he? Then he's going to have society take away his ability to buy guns or whatever.
Mm-hmm. I see. But I just come from the standpoint that he was still able to get a gun anyway. So there has to be.
That was because of government incompetency. So why are you suggesting we have more in government to come stop that? How would that stop that? The FBI, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, one of our most trusted government organizations, didn't do their own job.
But you're making it seem as though Nicholas Cruz is the only one that actually was a mentally unstable person that was able to buy a gun.
No, I'm not. What are you talking about?
There's definitely, there has to be multiple people that have done the same thing. So that has in credit to do with how much more lax our laws for guns.
All right, give me some examples.
Huh?
Give me some examples then, and we'll talk about them.
Okay, so couldn't someone easily just lie to let's just say here, you know what, since we're arguing with each other, I'll be friendly. Let's just say I have like some sort of like mental illness, and I decide to go buy a gun, and I lie in my own report about me registering for the gun. I completely lie. I completely make a fib. The retailer more than likely would still buy me the gun anyway, because for whatever I wrote on the report would be.
What are you lying about?
That I don't have mental problems at all in my own. I self-identify as a person without mental problems. So essentially, they're making a lie report because they really want to get that gun. Huh?
I don't understand. What's your point? People can lie?
No, I'm just saying that there should be more enforcement. There should be a little bit more enforcement to really know who this person really is with them trying to buy a gun. Because who knows? There could be people right now trying to go for a gun, trying to purchase a gun, and we don't even know if this person is actually authentic with their own.
But then those same people can just go buy it illegally. It's like drugs, they're totally available on the black market, whether you like it or not, and that's reality. So are we gonna make things harder for law-abiding citizens? Because that's essentially what you're suggesting.
Well, I wouldn't say it's too much of a restriction for the people that are obey the law, for the ones that are very
Well, what if someone
responsible
had
when it
depression
comes.
as a teenager and now they can't buy a gun because the government says, well, I think they might kill themselves, so I'm not going to let them buy a gun now.
Then we have to there has to be much more validation and information them about them before they can get a gun. We have to really know who they are getting the gun.
And then those
Because
people aren't going to
it's essentially
people aren't
because
going
you
to
can
seek
essentially
treatment if they're
turn
afraid that their constitutional rights are going to be taken away.
well
If the government's going to say, well, you know, you had this issue here, so I don't think we're going to let you buy a gun now, why would they ever go and seek treatment? If they're afraid of the problem, if they're afraid of what could result from that.
I mean of course there should be rehab programs in place to provide them the services that they need to help them. I mean, when I say, okay, because we really have to determine what kind of mental illness. I think that's the question here. Like, what kind of mental illness are we talking about? I think that's what we're
Well, that's what I'm
trying
saying.
to
It's not so
discern.
simple. Legislation always brings problems. Government is very bad at a lot of things. And it's very hard to write down on a piece of paper and define what is a mental illness that should qualify for buying a gun and what is a mental illness that should disqualify you from buying a gun. And that's my point. It's not that simple. So it's very easy to just be like, well, we need more mental health screening. But what does that mean? What does that entail?
Right,
It's
because
not such a
if you look
simple
at
issue.
the past 30 years, the what has been labeled as a mental illness has definitely changed. At one time, if you had gender dysphoria, that was considered to be a mental illness. Today, that's totally acceptable. We would have liberals who would push that if you're a conservative, that's a mental illness. So let's take the guns away
Ah,
from the right. This is where that becomes like a really fine line of what is mental illness because they
but
can definitely
that's
change the
not going to be in the
definition.
law. That wouldn't really be in the law to begin with, though.
Well,
Actually, it can be. That's not true. The Obama administration actually passed provisions that prevented people that helped prevent people with depression from buying guns, and actually caused them to be more likely to fail a federal background check.
look,
So yes, it does happen, and Democrats do pass things like that. And Trump recently overturned that through an executive order. Thank God. And it was an executive order by Obama.
wait, Tony, like look at the
So
IRS. The
and it's bad.
IRS was specifically targeting conservatives by going in and checking their businesses out more so than they were with liberals. They were targeting a certain group to go after them. You don't think they could do the same thing with mental health checks to take away guns?
So you're saying essentially by having Democrats in office
Yeah,
from that
I think that's
perspective.
very dangerous. And I know that a lot of
But
Democrats have a goal of taking guns away, and these are just a means to an end.
They absolutely do. And just
I
real
think
quick,
that's
I
a
just
little
want to share some
extreme. I don't like.
statistics on
I
guns.
don't think that's true.
Tony, how many gun deaths do you think there are in the United States every year?
Gun control doesn't necessarily mean uh automatic prohibition of guns entirely.
But
It
it
can
did
Gun
it
lead
in
to
control
it.
the
is just
UK.
more gun restriction. That's all it is.
Okay, Tony, how many gun deaths do you think there are in the United States every year? How many gun deaths? Sorry, not gun
I
loss.
mean, I looked into it a little bit before, but you could just tell me the number because I know you're gonna
Okay,
specify.
it's about 30,000. Okay, and two-thirds of those are suicides, right? So it's more like 12,000 gun homicides, but we'll give you the 30,000 anyways. All right,
Mhm.
30,000 gun deaths a year. How many defensive uses of firearms do you think there are in the United States every year?
Oh, yeah, I see where you're going with this. Yes, I know what you're talking about. So you're saying that more people are defending themselves using a gun to
So, okay,
shoot.
so according to
Yeah,
the Center for Disease Control, it's anywhere between 500,000 and over 3 million people use firearms defensively in order to protect themselves from violent crime in the United States every single year.
but
So clearly, guns are doing
they could
far
have
more good
gone,
than they
but
are
they
doing
could
harm.
have made this statistic more so towards the people that own guns, in the sense that if they just have a gun in their house, they could be counted as a part of that statistic, not
No,
necessarily defending themselves,
this is
but having the
defensive use.
gun
This is
within.
not, no, it's not having a gun in your house. This is defensive use. Having a gun in your house is not defensive use. It can be for defensive use if you need it.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. The
Yeah, but
ones
it's not.
that
It's
can
not
use it
defined
for
as that.
defense are applied to that
It's
statistic.
not applied to that statistic. No, it's not.
Are
It's
you
an actual
sure?
defensive
That
use.
is a huge number. That seems very conflated.
Yeah, because guns do a lot of good when law-abiding citizens have them. That's why. That's why it's a very
I,
big number.
I mean, sure. I support. I agree with you guys when it comes to law-abiding citizens being able to have a gun. That's what I'm saying. I sure I know I am a little bit more for the having a little bit more laws in place for gun control, but that doesn't necessarily mean that I want you know every single person that can that can with the with the cognitive faculties to get a gun. Like, sure, if they want to get a gun, I'm all for it.
But I think
But
it sounds more like you want to treat the symptom and not the actual disease. What's actually causing people to go out and kill people, right? It's more to do with culture and the degradation of society, because we didn't have these issues back in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. This is more of a new phenomenon since the late 90s onwards, right? So us going after legal people with guns isn't necessarily the problem. We should be going after the culture.
But weren't there less guns at that time than what we have now? It seems like we have so much more guns now than ever before.
No,
sure, culture could play a huge factor in this.
Maybe Darian can verify this, but I think gun ownership is actually maintained. It's about the same as it was back in the 60s. Now regulations for like automatic weapons has changed.
No,
yeah.
gun ownership.
Yeah, I know. Clinton passed the federal assault ban.
But that was only for about what, 8 years?
Gun ownership is much higher now than it ever was.
Okay, there you go.
Yeah, so especially because of Obama, a lot of people were afraid that he would take away their rights, so more people bought guns when Obama was president, and now more people are buying guns still.
Maybe I feel like it's not as simple as it might be described though with Obama's executive order.
No, because people thought there was going to be a gun grab, and so everyone went.
That's the concern,
right?
Yeah. That was the concern. Okay, come on now. I mean, when Democrats
they started the gun grab when they started passing unconstitutional legislation prohibiting certain people from buying firearms. So I don't find it to be very ridiculous.
Every time there's like a mass shooting too, there's a big buy on guns too, because they think there's going to be legislation following it.
Great, good.
But that doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to cascade into them. Let's just say they have more gun control. It means that they're going to take all your guns. Like that seems more tied to like a conspiracy.
But it happened in Australia. It happened in the UK, and we know what the laws that followed that. I'm sorry, what?
But their culture is different around guns. Most citizens in those countries supported removing guns entirely. So it wasn't a problem for those countries.
Well, they changed.
Here in America, we're much more patriotic with our guns. We're known to have guns being our favorite as a stereotype. So legislatively, that couldn't happen.
I mean, I could be plugging in the NRA right now, but I mean,
don't.
Yeah. Well, I could be plugging in the NRA right now, but like historically, we've always been a very gun culture society, like you said. But
yes, we are.
The narrative has been changing within the last couple decades.
So the concern is we're gonna have, as you would describe, far leftist communists coming in
the next 30 or 40 years, possibly.
Yeah, it could happen.
But there's far too many people that care about their gun rights to even let that happen.
And plus, Tony, do you know?
Are you saying that there's going to be an evolution of more people?
Important point here, Tony. Do you know why we have the Second Amendment?
Yes, it's justifiable.
Okay,
it's actually going to lead to the next debating topic that
why do we have the Second Amendment?
Discuss? Huh?
Why do we have the Second Amendment, the right to bear arms? Why do we have that?
To protect us from government tyranny. That's the main.
So why do you believe in giving more power to the government and limiting the power of the people?
Because I don't like to think that when the government has more limitations for people to get a gun, that it's necessarily a bad thing. I don't like to think it's a bad thing at all. It's like a just in case kind of law to say we're going to put these laws in place just in case for someone who's mental.
What if the government becomes tyrannical?
Huh?
What if the government becomes tyrannical?
That's an extreme case.
Okay,
how could the government?
Happens. It happened in Nazi Germany not too long ago in the 40s. I mean.
But
so
people have. What if people have more sensibility today than those times? We're never gonna. Okay. But with your logic,
you don't think in the 1940s people said, "Well, people had more sensibility now than they did in the 1700s." What's to stop it from happening now? That's what I'm saying.
Because we know what their ideology truly was, and I don't like to think that we have too many current candidates or potential future candidates having those super radical views.
That's my point. You don't know that. The whole point
they end up losing.
To stop us from having
neo-Nazis end up losing. People that self-identify as communists end up losing. It just won't happen. It just won't happen at all because we're far. Well, go ahead. Sorry.
How do you know it won't happen? That's what I'm saying. You can say you're so sure it won't happen, but if we don't have that check against them, what if it does happen? That's the reason we have that check. It's there for a reason. We broke away from the British. It's because they were imposing themselves on us and being very tyrannical and taxing us without representation. Why can't that happen now?
I mean, I feel like the
I
common
mean, we
argument
already have
against that.
Democrats in Chicago who are going and passing laws to allow illegal immigrants to vote in our country, and that's extremely unconstitutional. They're giving IDs to illegal immigrants and allowing them to vote. So
That's not right.
unconstitutional thing does
I agree
happen.
with you.
Stuff does happen, and our government does do it. So to say that it just doesn't, it's silly. It's to suggest that it can't happen.
Remember, the
But
LA
we're
riots weren't that
speaking.
long
But
ago.
no. Darian, you're only speaking from a state level. That is only a minute aspect of. We're talking federally, though. We're talking federally. What was going on in Germany, and the reason why it became such a huge uproar is because Hitler was the chancellor of Germany.
And you know what Hitler did?
Yes, I know what he did.
He banned guns.
It was the whole country. Okay, that's not necessarily the point.
I mean, it is part. It helped him take power when he took guns away from all the citizens. He was able to carry out his tasks a lot more easily.
So,
but here,
Tony, it's not necessarily the government that What about the rooftop Koreans that were protecting their property during the LA riots?
Yeah, definitely defense against just other people in general. Self-preservation, both against the government and other criminals.
Wait, can you just explain a little bit more of what that means?
So the rooftop
Rick, I'm
Koreans.
trying to remember.
Okay, so what happened was, I think it was like the 90s, was right after Rodney King had his ass kicked by the police, and all the people. Yeah, well, that's what happened. But all the people were out and rioting when they were pillaging different shops and they were burning different neighborhoods. What happened was there was a community of Koreans that had a block of businesses all together, and they went on the rooftops with semi-automatic rifles. And they were shooting at protesters that were coming towards their property. And what happened was, after the aftermath of the attacks, there was an island of prosperity where these, buildings were not even touched, while everything else around it had been looted, destroyed, and had been burnt down. So this was an armed militia that actually protected their property towards a band of vigilantes.
And by the way, real quick, do you know who encouraged the LA riots?
I'm sorry, what?
You know who encouraged and supported the LA riots?
The Democrats.
Democrats, Maxine Waters, Al Sharpton.
I'm not a big fan of those guys.
Horrible people.
Please,
they're fans
Rick,
of Coory
do
Booker,
not label me as them, like them, please.
No, but
I said, I'm center left.
I bet you Coory Booker's a fan of Maxine Waters.
That's not the point, man. You guys are making this so much more different. Okay, you know what, Rick? I do agree with that, though. I do think that they had the right to do whatever it was necessary for them to protect their businesses, because you can make the claim that they were trying to protect their own bodies from these people. Because I do believe in self-defense. Mm-hmm. If someone is attacking you and you have a gun with you, you have the right to shoot them, as long as if they're trying to attack you. So in that same situation, in that same case, it seems like the protesters, it seems like they were going to try to harm the business.
Well,
but
the protesters
you
had
can
guns
make the case
too.
that they were trying to harm the Koreans, so they had the right to self-defense.
Mm-hmm.
So I agree. But that's not my point, though. My point is not banning guns. That's what just a little bit more restriction. I'll just say it like that. Just a little bit more restriction. It won't hurt the country. Because our culture is based off of guns, like I've said.
But yeah, but
Rick, you love your guns.
I do.
Darian loves his guns. But Tony, it's not going to be taken away from you.
Tony,
Constitution too.
Yeah.
A lot of the older NRA members are sad to say are dying off. The younger generation isn't really growing up with this gun culture. So yes, right now we do have that gun culture. 30, 40 years from now, that could possibly
We're not going to have it.
And that doesn't make overturning constitutional amendments so suddenly okay, because we don't have a gun culture.
You might change a law now and normalize it, and then they're going to say, well, we need more reform because we're still having homicides.
It's always one more thing. And
after the other. That's what you're trying to say.
And this is what happened in Australia.
They're going to say, what's one more law going to do?
Right. It creeps up.
Yeah, I mean,
because Australia had a gun culture too with the Outback. And remember, it was a penal colony originally, and they were just like us, like 40 or 50 years ago. But unfortunately, it was one law after the other, and eventually they did have a gun grab.
Yep.
But okay, because that's centered.
Check Messenger, by the way, guys.
Messenger.
Yeah. Keep going though.
Okay. I guess I can look at that real quick. I think people still watching? I hope they are. Anyways, man, you conservatives.
I got 7 right now, including me though. I think.
Okay, this person just keeps messaging me.
We have a person from France watching.
Yeah, I know. Isn't that cool?
Oh, amazing.
So shout out to Le Cavalier.
Hello, France.
Hey, what is up, man? You have the best healthcare in the world, universal healthcare, right?
Oi, sacre bleu.
I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
All right, so let's segue to the next topic, eminent domain. So let me phrase the question like this: is there any situation where eminent domain would be justified? And then let's go with Darian first.
Okay, this is bread and butter right here.
Darian, are you there?
Okay. Yeah, I mean, yeah, it can be justified in the case where, let's say you're trying to build a highway that's going to better society in some way, and it's pretty much 90% complete. And then there's one asshole who's got a house and he doesn't want to move. And even if he gets, say, offered double the freaking market value rate, he says, no, I'm going to stay. And like it completely destroys the possibility of that. So, yes, it can be justified in some cases.
Okay, Tony.
There you go. Wait. Okay. I do support eminent domain. I think eminent domain in most cases can work very, very well. Otherwise, if we didn't even have eminent domain at all, then we wouldn't have national parks, we wouldn't have libraries, we wouldn't have schools, we wouldn't have whatever we use. We wouldn't have parks that we can go and swing, for example. So I'm saying that if we didn't have eminent domain, then all of that would have been impossible.
Okay, so
We
how about
wouldn't be
this
able to
then?
enjoy. Yeah.
There's another form of eminent domain where government will buy out a certain amount of property, and instead of doing a utility like a fire station or a highway, they sell it to a business that wants to put in a skyscraper or
Nope.
a
Yeah, that's
wall
what
or
I was
something
going to
like
say.
that.
Nope. 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 I know that current property owners actually do have the right to understand the justification of what the government would do with the property they're trying to claim,
Some
and
places
it's
do.
it's based off of the decision. It's based off of the decision of the courts. Judges will either approve or disapprove. So when it comes to eminent domain to help a private company or anything that relates to, I guess, private occupancy, absolutely in disagreement of that. And I honestly like to think that I wish the Constitution could have provided a little bit more specificity on that.
Yeah, no, I'd agree with you there. It's not good because actually, if you look
No, yeah, I
at the Supreme
agree.
Court
I think
case,
any
Kello
specific
versus
person should
City of
agree.
New London, in a 5-4 decision, private land was
Yes,
actually forcibly transferred over. Uh,
yes.
private land was forcibly transferred over to another private property for the betterment of the community. So, I mean,
Sure.
that's just terrible. And according to the judge's interpretation, the Constitution allowed for that. So, eminent domain does have its problems, and it does get abused,
Yeah,
without a doubt.
but yeah. See, the Kelo case is the one that really speaks a lot because I know that this is one of the most infamous Supreme Court decisions in American history. Actually, a lot of lawyers that were actually just saying, "What the hell was going on with these judges?" But regardless, a bountiful amount of states actually passed uh, eminent domain laws to restrict governments from actually doing what was already happening with the Kelo versus City of New London case. I think
Darian,
that's yeah.
do you know which states are like more prominent in using eminent domain than others?
I have no idea.
So I found that
Probably Democratic,
yeah, it was
but
mostly Democratic states. And then
yeah,
one
okay, I
case
figured.
in particular up in Michigan where they bought up a bunch of property and took it from homeowners, and they were going to give it to a business. After they had just bulldozed all the houses and it became an open lot, the company that they were going to sell it to went out of business. They went bankrupt, and it ended up being a completely open lot, and people lost their homes for nothing. So I think that that is probably the most destructive thing. Really, I hate eminent domain. Um, I would say that for in the case of highways, maybe, but it's funny because like in China and the communist government of China, they actually do not practice eminent domain, and you'll have cases where you have like a highway going in a straight line and then curves around a house because the homeowner wouldn't give up
Yeah,
that
it's pretty
home to the
funny.
government. This is
See,
freaking China.
that's extreme.
Yeah.
Why in the world? See, I support eminent domain in the sense that if because most cases of eminent domain, from what I was able to look, is usually the government tries to seize property that's in usually very dilapidated condition. So I know that there was a lot of propositions for eminent domain in Detroit because you look at the area of Detroit, not looking too good in many cases. So that's where the government tries to go to Detroit because a lot of the houses are either completely abandoned, completely left out, while you might have one homeowner, two homeowners still living in. And that's where the government will have eminent domain to negotiate with property owners
Well, the
in that
problem is
sense.
they're
So
also
it's not like the government is trying to go to like someone's mansion and say, well, we're trying to have eminent domain in this specific area, because especially if they're trying to build more schools, especially in urban areas, they tend to have a lot of surroundings of just very bad shaped homes, essentially.
well, like
So that's where they'll usually have eminent
what
domain.
Detroit is doing in particular is they're trying to consolidate resources because I guess the town is too spread out from where the population was much higher. So they'll destroy homes
Right.
for the purpose of just destroying it to encourage people to move into the city. And then that in itself should be a violation of your rights, I would think. But again, this is what typically happens in blue states.
Yes, yes. And I mean, when I say I support eminent domain, I just support that that the government should have the right, especially for good intentions, for there to be eminent domain. I'm not
Right.
for like harsh.
You know what
I'm
else
not
was
for
good
like,
intentions?
huh?
You know what else was for good intentions? The
Here
UK
we go.
government under a single payer healthcare system forcing the parents to pull the plug on their kids and letting them die, all while having armed guards that forbade the parents from getting their own child and takes them to the US to seek better treatment.
Oh, it's like the Terry Schiavo case in Florida too.
Okay, I mean,
So it's like
it's
it's
not
very
okay.
very
Are
dangerous.
you saying this essentially to attack universal healthcare because of
It's
something
very
like
dangerous
that?
to let the government be the moral arbiter in decisions, and for the government to do what's right for the good for the common good. Because as we've seen with our current politicians in office, they often don't do that, nor do they care to.
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
You know,
yeah,
I think we're mostly on agreement with eminent domain, so we're actually going to go into the
Yeah,
next
sure.
topic. Um,
Because banning eminent domain is
no,
not
I think we
smart
all
at all, I
agree.
would say.
I think we're actually unanimous on this topic, so we're good
we're
there.
Yeah,
pretty much mostly agreeing. Yeah.
Fifth Amendment, it's constitutional.
Yeah.
So,
All right, so the next,
anyways.
this is the last topic. This is the wall and immigration. Now, we've all kind of talked about this prior. None of us
Okay.
here are for open borders, but we kind of do disagree
Mhm.
on the wall. Tony,
Yes.
could you give further explanation on that?
Sure. So my perception on the wall is quite clear to me that I don't think we should have a wall, not only because of the expenses for the wall, and I know that this is the most common argument for to being against or for the wall is the expenses and taxpayer money invested into it. But I think I'm against the wall as well because why would we invest on the wall now, considering that Trump is more than halfway done with his presidency,
The former
and then
president
realize that
of Mexico,
and then realize what if Trump loses in 2021 to a Democrat and they completely abolish any additional means of spreading the wall at all. So what I'm trying to say is I think this is a very risky investment because if I'll just say this one more time, Trump loses, let's just say Trump loses in 2021. No Democrat wants the extension of the wall. So if the Democrat just leaves the wall as it is or completely just tries to stop the wall entirely, then that is essentially an example and a paradigm of taxpayer money being wasted. And
Okay,
as a
so
fiscal
that's not a good
conservative,
argument. So your logic is, well, we shouldn't do anything that's good and beneficial to our country because the Democrat might get elected and stop it. That makes absolutely no sense. That's like
I
saying we
mean,
shouldn't have cut taxes on the majority of working class Americans. Well, actually, on 80% of Americans, which included the poor, the middle, and the working class. Because, well, what if a Democrat gets elected and overturns the tax bill?
but
That argument holds no water with me whatsoever.
but that, but
That
that,
doesn't make sense. That
you
means
have
so.
to
Let's not
realize that
progress anyway in our
building the wall
because a
takes a lot
Democrat
of
might come in.
time as well. So Trump is going to be going through re-election. Let's just say if there's still a reconstruction of the wall. If a Democrat wins in 2021, forget about the wall.
So let's
I
do
don't know
nothing.
why you would think that a
Again,
continuation.
let's do nothing that benefits our country because a Democrat might come and stop it. That makes absolutely no sense. I'm sorry, that doesn't make sense. Like,
I don't see
you
how
agree with
that
the
doesn't
tax
make
cut?
sense at all.
Well, wait, hold on, Darian. Hold on. If you're concerned about other issues, and if you think that it's political suicide to build the wall, and now you won't be able to get the other issues done, there is a point on there about not building the wall, though. Not that I agree
Well,
with
he's
it.
saying, what if the Democrat gets elected and
Because
stops the wall?
if a Democrat is in office and Trump still wants the wall to be built and Trump's not in power anymore, then that's essentially a waste. That's essentially a waste of a
Oh,
wall being built to begin with.
do you think a Democrat would tear down the wall after building it?
I mean, it could happen. I just know that I think it makes sense. We can agree that or almost all Democrats don't agree with the wall whatsoever. It could happen. They could tear down the wall, and that's going to be more taxpayer money on our end.
Well, that's the Democrats' fault. That doesn't make sense. It's like why would we not? Why don't we just sit here and not solve any issues our country has because a Democrat might come and stop it? That doesn't make sense.
So okay,
Obama didn't tear down the wall that Bush built.
Also, furthermore, this idea that the wall is a waste of taxpayer money is completely false. A wall, okay.
Let me look over here. How much money do we need to fund the wall?
The Department of Homeland Security estimates that the wall will cost about $21.6 billion. That is peanuts.
That doesn't include maintenance fees. So it's much more than that.
Okay, yeah.
It has to be.
Okay, let me finish. So that's to construct the wall. Okay, $21.6 billion. That is peanuts, and we have a $4.2 trillion annual budget. That is nothing. Do you know how much illegal immigration costs our country every year?
How much?
Okay, so according to a study by the National Academics of Science, Engineering, and Medicine, illegal immigrants cost the United States a whopping 296, well, up to, I should say, I'll clarify that, but up to $296 billion a year from federal, state, and local taxpayers. So you're talking about a $21.6 billion wall, which will save us up to $300 billion a year. And when you also consider that we have 16 to 20 million illegal immigrants in our country, that is a huge amount of money, and that will help us a lot. So it will help our country. And to say, well, we shouldn't do it because it costs, it'll be a waste of taxpayer money. No, that's not true. It'll save a ton of taxpayer money.
I mean, there's a higher.
Not going to go. No, it's not going to go nearly that much. Okay, I can tell you that. Also, so because if it's $20, if it's a little over $20 billion just to build it, and it'll save us almost $300 billion a year, it's not even going to cost what it costs to maintain it. It's not even going to cost what it costs to build the thing. So maintenance fees are irrelevant. They really, it doesn't matter.
But how much more of maintenance fees would apply to the construction of the wall? Because
let's say
you have to take into account that you're paying much more. Okay. You're paying, Darian, you yourself are paying for this wall. Rick is paying for this wall. I'm paying for this wall.
Yeah. Okay. We pay for things in our country. I mean, what's your point?
Yeah, I'm happy with that.
Yeah, me too.
Oh my God. But okay. I was gonna say, but you're a libertarian. You don't support that. But anyways, I'm not trying to lump you in one category. You're
paying almost $300 billion a year for illegal immigrants. Is that okay with you?
You make it seem as though we have so much money for this wall. But when we discuss healthcare, it seems like it's
actually, yeah, we do. You know why? Because the wall is $20 billion, and socialized system of medicine like you want is $32 trillion for 10 years. So you can't compare them. They're wildly different figures. And for you to say, oh, well, this is that, no.
Nah, man.
They're not even comparable. It's just not.
Okay, so you're saying essentially that the wall is cheap, right?
Yes.
Because Trump said it was going to be $17 billion, and I'm like, okay, well, Department of Homeland Security said it's so much more.
Department of Homeland Security, and it says they say $21.5 billion, which is a very small amount of money for when you consider that we have a $4.2 trillion annual budget.
Now, wait, here's the question: Is that a wall from from the Gulf of Mexico to the Pacific, or just to the Rio Grande?
I don't know. I'm not sure.
Okay, so I mean,
you also forget we'll also increase border security to provide jobs for Americans, and that's all at the benefit of the American people. Letting illegal immigrants in is not to the benefit of the American people.
Sure. No, I agree.
So how are we going to stop them if we're not going to secure our border? There are parts of the border that literally just have a barbed wire fence that people can jump over. If we're not blocking those people, how are we helping the American people?
Because most of the illegal immigrants that have already been in here would have already been past the wall anyway than actually crossing over. You make it seem as though that you paint this narrative that people are hopping over the border, so that's why we have so many people in this country.
Well, they are, yeah.
It's because people are overstaying their visas that are supposed to go back that aren't even going back. That's the problem. There's much more people in this country that are illegal immigrants now that had visas that are supposed to be deported back. So a wall won't make a difference.
But for people who don't jump over the wall, we don't have a record for them. So you don't know that for sure. We don't have any record on people who jump over the border. So how do you know?
But you make it seem as though they just cross over.
Yes, they do.
They've crossed over already.
Yeah.
No,
unless we secure.
There's not a transparency within the law to recognize the people that have overstayed their visas that are supposed to go back. They overstay their visas and they don't go back at all.
That's a problem too, and that's why we should have E-Verify be mandatory for employers so people can't overstay their visas.
There has to be sort of reformation within immigration, rather. I would support.
Yeah, we need to reform immigration. But if we don't have a border, how are we going to stop illegal immigrants from jumping our border? Because you're saying we shouldn't have a border.
I do think we should have a border, but a wall is not
Why
what
not?
it's supposed to.
It blocks people from jumping over. Why shouldn't we have it?
Because
what?
Okay. I wanted to say no. This answers
We
your
have
question.
16 to 20 billion illegal immigrants in our country who are costing us up and upwards of almost $300 billion a year. Why should we not build a wall that will stop many of those people from coming? In Israel,
because
Israel had problems with illegal
because it's
immigration.
actually
They built
more
a wall
limited
and
than
they
you
cut
expect.
immigration by 99%. Sorry, what was that?
Okay, that's the numbers for Israel, but that doesn't necessarily pertain to the United States.
Why
they have
would
different.
The United States, if we secure our border, why would it not drastically lower
You're
illegal
making it
immigration?
seem as though Israel, they have a 99% chance of illegal immigrants not coming to the countries. You're implying that same number, and you're trying to say
I'm saying the United States would be significant. It might not be 99%, but it could be more than 50% of border crossings stop because of that, and that's a lot. That could mean billions of people stopping them from coming to our country illegally.
Billions of people?
Yeah, it definitely could. We have 16 to 20, an estimate between 16 to 20 billion illegal immigrants in our country. So yes, building a wall over time could stop billions of people from coming in. Sorry, millions, not billions. I apologize.
Yeah, I was going to say.
You know what I mean? Millions, that's
Sure.
what I'm talking about.
But where I don't agree with the wall in the sense is that it's more limited than you actually think. If you let's just say you want to stop at Rio Grande, because there was a map that I was able to see that it would go from California to Texas, those states. It's actually much more limited than you would expect. People could actually go around there anyway. There was also the fact of the matter that there's also tunnels. There's been tunnels that were dug from people importing drugs through our country. So if there's tunnels for people to go through underground through our country, what difference would a wall?
You build it underground?
Then that would be much more money.
Fine.
Much more allocation of resources. So would you want to pay double for the wall, essentially?
I'd be fine. I'd be happy with that. Yeah, because it's still $300 billion a year. So yes, paying $40 billion for a wall would not be an issue.
So would you be okay with, let's just say, we find out that the wall actually ends up being triple the anticipation rate than we would think? It might be 20 billion, but it's actually 65 billion instead. 65 Democrats, billion. For some reason, say it's 92 billion. I'm a little bit skeptical because they're much more.
If it was 92 billion, I'd still support it.
Well, Tony, there are areas, drug trafficking areas, that don't have a wall. It's just open terrain. Exactly. And
no wall at all. And you're saying
they're going through those areas.
I agree with that.
Sure. So, but what about mountainous terrains? That's the question. You can't. If we're gonna build it for that mass, we have to realize that we're gonna run into different terrains that aren't applicable for a wall to actually be built. We have certain mountain regions that can't have a wall whatsoever. People can probably cross through here, huh?
To suggest that we can't build a wall when there are mountainous ranges is not true. Mountainous ranges are in everyday society. We have houses, we have roads on them. You can build walls on them.
China did it.
It's not true. Yeah.
Okay, there's probably rivers. There's other. Okay, so you're essentially saying that you can build the wall in all kinds of terrain because for each state, for each specific city, for each specific town, you have different forms of terrain that isn't always applicable for a wall to be built.
Still build a wall.
Well, Tony,
no, you can't.
Tony, even if you don't build a total wall, a Great Wall of America, putting it in areas, the hotspot areas where the drug traffickers are known to go through, at least put a section of the wall up. And then they'll go to different areas, and you put walls up in those areas too. The point is, we're trying to make it more difficult, and we're trying to create a deterrence of it's becoming more and more difficult to go across the border. It's no longer even worth the risk or the cost to go through a mountain in order to get into the United States. You know what? Maybe we should just go through the front door from now on. It's just deterrence. It's not going to be perfect, and yes, there are going to be natural barriers. Putting it on a river with the Rio Grande would be extremely difficult. Erosion would probably destroy that part of the wall too. But that's not a reason not to build it. You're going to have to do parts of it at least.
Okay, parts of it, but you make it seem as though we have to have a full wall entirely. That's what's being discussed.
We need the wall in areas right now where the wall does not exist.
And much of it is not secure, and that's a problem.
So why not say we need more? Why not say we need more enforcement in those specific areas rather than a wall by itself?
We need all of it. We need a separate.
Sure. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, so why not save costs by, instead of building a wall, just saying, okay, we don't have a big enough area there, and a lot of illegal immigrants can hop over that area. So why not redirect ourselves in that area instead?
Because a wall is a one-time expense. To put agents there, you
Exactly.
have to pay their, their
You're
their
also putting them
wages.
more at risk if they don't have a border in front of them. Illegal immigrants can come in swarms and attack the border patrol agents. If there's no border, they can
You
just
know,
rush over and
the wall worked fine for Israel, and their crime and their attacks have declined significantly ever since they built it up around Palestine. If it worked for them, it can work for us.
But I think we had to play. We had to play into the matter of geographics, though. Like, I don't like to. Okay, all right, all right. My other argument I was gonna say, because I know that we could just keep going on and on. Don't worry, I'm not gonna say I won't be convinced.
Well,
Trust me,
we
if
have
I am
gone through
convinced.
2 hours now. Keep in mind.
Okay,
it's
okay,
been a good discussion.
yeah, okay. Um, okay. My problem with the wall. Okay, I'll make another point on top of my other points, which you guys countered. Is there's this false stereotype that I have listened to a lot that having a border wall makes it seem as though Mexicans are the only ones that are hopping over the border, or anyone around that area south from the United States are coming through that area. So you have to realize that we have Canadians coming through this country illegally. We have to
They're
realize
the
that
vast majority.
Danish people are coming through here illegally.
True.
So
The 9/11
making a false
hijackers were here also.
And that's why we should have E-Verify, and then any illegal immigrant, regardless of their skin color, will not be able to overstay.
but a wall seems to only restrict, it only seems to make a restriction for one particular group. And trust me, I'm not going to say that it's
And
racist
that
to build a
group is
wall.
sending the
Trust
majority
me,
of
it's
illegal
just a
immigrants south of
perspective.
the
I
Tony,
think it's ridiculous. Yeah.
you know there are
that group.
parts. Wait, hold on. You know there are parts of the wall with the border with Canada that has a wall also, right? If you go on Google Earth and you zoom into these areas, they've actually clear-cut entire parts of the forest and put up barbed wire fences to separate Canada and the United States. So it's not like it's a
Is
racial
that
thing.
really a wall though?
Well, it's a cheap way of doing
Fine.
it. Like just like on the southern border, we have areas that's just barbed wire fence that doesn't have an
So why
actual
not
wall.
just build more barbed wire fences instead of an
Because
actual
it's so
wall?
much easier to cut through a barbed wire fence than it is to climb over a wall.
Absolutely.
You know, I was gonna make this ridiculous claim. Well, can't they just like stand on top of each other until they reach over the wall? And then I'm just kidding. I know that wouldn't be as practical. See, I will admit to say this, that I hate when people say that you can't make good arguments for specific claims, and I feel like you guys have made many good arguments for your claims, but I don't think that if you really think about it in this current age, that if Trump doesn't become president anymore, then what's going to happen to the wall afterwards?
What happens
That's
when Cory
what
Booker beats him and decides to open borders?
Okay, that's a fair point. But I'm just saying that there's just too much at stake for there to be a wall to be built. Another thing that I want to say as well, and I think this is a very common argument, but I got to use the argument, is people make this assertion. Trump always made this assertion before he became president that he was going to have Mexico pay for the wall, but Mexico is not willing to pay a nickel or a dime or a penny for the wall.
Mexico is
So
not
there
going
has
to write
to be.
Mexico's not going to write a check. That's never going to happen. The whole idea of that was just completely dumb. But what we could do is we could tax them. We could do some kind of tariff program where if we're going to export things to Mexico or import things from them, there's going to be a tariff on it, and those tariffs will be used to building the wall.
So why not just put tariffs now against them to say, well, we don't want your citizens to come in, so we're going to put tariffs on you, rather than to have
we have put tariffs on Mexico.
Well, this is part of the reason why we have to renegotiate NAFTA, because right now NAFTA says you can't do that. So once NAFTA's been renegotiated, which is Trump is pushing for right now, then we can put in those tariffs.
Right.
Trump did put tariffs though on Mexico.
Has he said he's going to, or did he already?
On Canada, he did. Yeah, it might make sense. I think he did.
Then he's in violation of NAFTA, but it doesn't matter. We don't have to abide by
that. Rick, you are the man, dude. Anyways, I mean, I don't know. I think wouldn't you rather have maybe President Trump say, okay, maybe instead of a wall, we should contact the president of Mexico and say, please keep your citizens at bay, please. Or have Mexico enforce their own laws to stop immigrants
he's
from
told
trying
them
to
to do
come
it
to
and
the
they won't
U.S.
do it. That's why he's punished them. The president of Mexico right now is literally campaigning to illegal immigrants in the United States because they're able to vote in Mexican elections despite being in the U.S. And he's actually went and publicly said, sorry, not the president, but one of the main presidential candidates to Mexico.
Yeah.
And he's actually gone and said that, and he's probably going to be the next president, that the United States has an obligation to take in immigrants from Mexico. So it's a very hostile act. They clearly do not care about fixing any of their immigration laws.
So I actually got this flyer on my car today, and it's from La Raza. It's the voice of the people. And it's a campaign thing for Lopez Obrador, who is running for president of Mexico. And he is a nationalist, a left-wing nationalist, who wants to bring in as many Mexicans as possible into the United States with the sole purpose of taking back the Southwest. This is what we basically did with the colony of Texas by putting Anglos into Texas, and then they rebelled, right? But that's what his goal, his long-term goal is. So when you have a person like that running for president, and let's say he does win because he's looking like he's in the lead right now.
That's a little scary.
Yeah, it's very difficult to get them to change course when they've already had that rhetoric out there. So.
Right. Okay. I didn't know that, by the way. Thank you for letting me know. See, this is why we have arguments, because it's really much more difficult than what we would think. And that's why our perceptions lean towards something that we feel might be more rational. But I mean, okay, can I just say this in defense for you guys? This is in defense of you guys.
Thanks.
I hate when people make it seem as though you can't make good arguments for the wall. I think there's so many good arguments you can make for the wall. And I just wanted to say that, also to the audience, because it just seems like leftist media has made it seem as though if you are for the wall, then you are a retard or you are stupid. Sorry, PC, you can't say retard. But I mean, can I say retard? You guys are
we don't get.
You guys are anti-PC,
right? We
don't
appreciate your ableist words. I'm triggered right now. I don't feel safe in my bubble.
Caleb, if you're watching, I am so sorry. It slipped, man. We have a friend named Caleb, and me and Darian have gone through some stuff with.
Oh, he doesn't like that.
But I mean, he kind of doesn't want us to say it, but
move on
slip of the tongue. So.
He doesn't like the word.
Anyways, yeah. Oh, he does not. He does not. No. I mean, he's a conservative, but trust me. When we're out west, we won't liberalize the club. I swear on my life, we won't. Okay, I promise.
Hey,
you.
Are you guys?
We're not going to say you have to like the Democratic Party to.
Tony, are you going to bring in McSally to the west?
Probably.
I mean, you're president. Oh, by the way, I know Caleb is interning.
Hey, real quick though, we're going a little off topic. We're just talking about random stuff. We can do this after the stream. Sure. But should we now open it up to Q&A from any of the audience if they want to ask whatever they?
Yes, Q&A.
Yeah.
Okay,
yes.
So I'm looking at the Q&A right now, and it's a lot of comments, but not necessarily any questions. But everyone's in support of us. We have 8 people watching now, and everyone's rooting us on.
Yes.
Hunter Rowe mentioned that although I disagree with Tony, on almost everything he's been saying, he says that he feels that there should be another left-leaning person in the debate panel to make this a bit more interesting. So perhaps maybe in the future we could do like a part 2 session.
Sure.
Rick was supposed to be a moderator.
No, this isn't a formal debate. I wasn't really moderating. This was a 3-way conversation, but I was pretty quiet because I was doing some things behind the scenes. But if I don't know, it depends on you guys. Would you prefer a formal debate next time?
We'll talk about that soon, but real quick, anyone who's watching right now, we have a Q&A. Ask whatever you want, please.
Whatever you want.
Do it.
You want to ask why I had this haircut? Sure, I don't.
Oh, here, I got a question.
It relates, I guess.
I got a question from Josh.
Sure.
So this is like a really important question. Are traps gay?
Traps?
Yes. Are traps gay?
Wait, traps.
I don't see that in the YouTube chat.
No, it's a private message.
Okay.
Wait, traps. Like, what is traps? I don't feel smart right now.
You know, like the trap card on Yu-Gi-Oh?
Sure.
We'll discuss that later.
Sure. Yeah. You guys are crazy. Man.
Who are you voting for the Senate?
No questions from the audience here.
Tony, who are you voting for Senate?
For the Senate right now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Don't say Martha McSally.
Okay, I'll be honest with you. I really do like Kelly Ward for the Republicans for the most part. I am completely anti Arpaio. I don't think Arpaio should be running. I think he should be a goner, in my opinion.
You're not going to vote for Cinema?
So, Cinema, I don't know too much about her.
Yeah.
They've said she's a moderate, so
Green
maybe
Party,
I don't know. But
Ralph Nader supporter. No.
Ward is so much better than Cinema. Even McSally's better than Cinema.
wow.
Well, we should get Josh on here for that conversation because that was heated last time.
So.
Wait, what do you mean? Wait, he doesn't like. Oh yeah, of course.
Oh, hey, Hunter asked a question, guys.
Oh, go ahead and read it. I turned my thing off.
Okay, Hunter asked, what is wrong or right about the Iran deal?
What is right or wrong? I mean,
I think it was. What do you think is good? What do you think is bad?
Okay, so I think the good part is that we were able to sort of denuclearize, or not. I'm not going to say denuclearize, but we were able to restrict the resources that they already had for making a nuclear weapon. Because I think that that's definitely the biggest concern. Is knowing how Iran is and knowing how unpredictable their government has been, that it seems like they were wanting to build a nuclear weapon of some sort. So by having the Iran deal, was able to cut off literally almost more than 90% of the resources that they could use to build a nuclear weapon. So I support it primarily because it seems like we had the better end of the deal for the most part. But I would say the one bad thing I don't like about the Iran deal is this only happens for 15 years. So the sanctions are gone. They don't have any more sanctions with the Iran deal. But what ends up happening is after 15 years, they can have as much uranium as they want. They can have as much centrifuges as they want. Anything that's viable for building a nuclear weapon. So I kind of wish President Obama could have made the Iran deal maybe like 30, 50 years, but he only made it 15. So on paper, I think it's great. I mostly support it, but they do have a lot of inspections in Iran. Is it every month? I don't know if it's every month or every 3 months. I can't remember, but they do actually have Americans going over there to inspect if Iran is actually adhering to the deal at all. And if they're not, if they didn't, then we would bring back the sanctions against them. And I think that's fair for the most part. So.
Yeah, and I think the Iran deal got too much hate from the conservative side. I kind of mostly agree with the stuff Tony said for the most part. So I don't have much to add, but it seemed like Iran was adhering to it. There were issues with it all, I know, but this is more the Obama administration than Iran, though. The Obama administration tried to get Iran to actually violate tenets of the deal by asking banks to go and give Iran American money.
I heard about that
breakout
too.
report talking about that. So there were issues with it. It probably should have been renegotiated. I don't agree with scrapping it entirely because Iran was for the most part following it and then the U.S. basically just went back on their deal. So
that's what I would say about Trump. I didn't really agree with Trump kind of getting away from that.
And then
but let me say,
go ahead.
I was going to just say one last thing. I think the reason why a lot of people actually are against the Iran deal is because I don't know where this came from, but there were sources that were saying, primarily a little bit on the conservative side, saying that Obama sent like $100 billion to Iran. So of course they're going to comply since we send them $100 billion.
Send the money. It's like it wasn't sanctions. Like that's one thing the right will always be like, oh, we gave them this money. It's like, no, you didn't give them this money. You're just not sanctioning them as much as you were before. So that's
so there was that ordeal. I thought like, oh my gosh, why would Obama do that? But then I was like, it's a little bit of a biased source. So they're gonna try to say Obama is like the devil and he's a Muslim. No, I'm just kidding. The far right people will say he's a Muslim. I mean, okay, I'm not gonna get there, but
we have another comment here after Hunter's question. We have TJJ, and he says, "Deport the blacks."
Oh my gosh!
Really?
That's quite the insightful comment there.
Wait, can I just say this real quick? Is Josh Fisher watching by any chance?
I think that is TJ.
If so, I do not think Hitler was cool. By the way, Josh Fisher, if you're asking, I don't think he's that cool. I just remember, man, this whole thing, man. But can I just say this quickly?
You're welcome, Hunter.
Can I just say this quickly? I think that even though we did have disagreements, I'm just so glad that we had so much civility with each other. I'm so glad that we're still like cool, and because if you think about it, some people after certain debates don't want to even talk to each other anymore.
Oh,
You got
absolutely.
like family members. Like talk about intolerance. So I'm just this is why I looked forward to debating Darian or discussing with Darian because I
Look,
know he's not
it's
going to
not a
be
Republican
sensitive.
or Democrat issue. It's a human issue. Okay, so
Yeah.
I can't say I'm friends with you now after this debate. I'm
Yeah.
offended.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Why is this
Um
partisan?
Yeah, well, we can have a respectful conversation without name calling, without like calling each other cucks or rhinos or degenerate liberals. Tony, we're not going to push you out of the helicopter, so.
yeah. But trust me, uh like I've said to Darian in the past, I've had my mind changed before. Like I used to be against gun control. I used to be on the same perspective as you. But I don't know why. I just tend to go back and forth. Like abortion. I lean pro-life,
Oh,
pro-choice,
I'm the same
pro-life.
way with
It's just
abortion.
hard. You're a eugenics kind of guy, bro.
Well, we could
I'm
talk
just
about
kidding.
that later. Well,
Yeah,
yeah,
no.
with
I know.
abortion,
I'm kidding. I'm
I
kidding.
could see that. I could see that both ways, like the sanctity of life,
It's
and then
hard.
also, there are other times where rape and incest and maybe other reasons that you might want to
Mm-hmm.
be in favor of it. Do I want babies aborted, the day before they're supposed to give birth? Hell no. That's
No.
way too fucking late.
What about in 5 months? Coory Booker.
Oh my gosh. Here we go.
Tony,
Darian, I don't want to talk to you anymore, bro. You're a
is Cory
racist.
Booker a racist? Yes or no? No, no, I'm just kidding.
But I
Hey,
also think that
can I
there.
just
Go ahead. Go ahead.
no, I was gonna say, can I just say that I used to be in support of the Patriot Act, actually. I used to think security was more important than privacy. I just wanted to give you that. But then my friend Caleb started telling me, like he was just trying to convince me a little bit. I did the research and I'm against the Patriot Act. I
No,
just want to let you
Tony,
guys know
I'm in
that.
the same boat also because I always thought like, yeah, security, that makes sense. A lot of the things they're saying makes common sense. But again,
Right.
government went too far. And this is why we have
Yes.
to rein it back in every now and then. Or
Mm-hmm.
not pass legislation to begin with because of knee-jerk reactions like gun control.
Exactly. Right. Exactly.
We got another question, by the way.
Oh, read it.
It wasn't on the stream, but it was in a group chat. So
Sure.
I'm glad it was there. But so I'll just copy and paste it in the crew debate real quick. But this was a question from Spiky or Kevin DeKuyper, a friend of ours.
Oh
He
yeah.
asked, "What is classical liberalism to you?" So I'll go real quick. It is essentially, I mean, pretty much the definition. Like, it's this. It's very similar to libertarianism in terms of
It
ideology,
is.
where it's essentially you do what you want to do as long as you're not affecting other people. Um, so I can take some real jabs at Tony on this. No, I'm just kidding.
Did you even read
No, no.
Locke?
I'm
Yeah.
just joking. No, but yeah, so it's
Um.
essentially what it is. Let me Google the definition real quick. So we've got here a branch of liberalism which advocates civil liberties under the rule of law with an emphasis on economic freedom. So, I mean, yeah, I totally agree with that. I'd say I'm a classical liberal. I agree with the definition. It's pretty much the definition to me. That's what I'd
Yeah.
say.
Well,
Free markets,
Darian,
stuff like that.
did you even read Locke? I mean, come on.
Adam Smith. Adam Smith. He's the guy for the libertarians. I'm just kidding. I mean, can I answer the question too?
Yeah, go ahead.
Possibly.
No.
I will say that there is something that I don't like with what far leftists like to say, that neoliberalism is the same as classical liberalism. Neoliberalism is actually the opposite of classical liberalism because neo actually means new and classical means old. Anyways, classical liberalism, in my opinion, just essentially means that the best thing that the government should do for every citizen is to protect their freedoms and their rights, but not necessarily intervene in the means of how they're living. So, for example, if the government's saying you can't live in this house, that would be the opposite of classical liberalism. So, classical liberalism is this very, fundamental idea that individuals should have their own choices to do whatever they essentially want to do, as long as it doesn't abridge or go against other people's rights. Which, in my opinion, I would say this is the literal classic definition of libertarianism. I like to think classical liberalism and libertarianism are very much the same. Limited government, laissez-faire economics. So essentially a capitalistic society, which some people say that's racist, but that's, in my opinion,
Well,
insane for them to
it's
think.
the idea
But
that rights come from nature or God, and that it's
yeah,
the opposite of monarchism, where the king was
yeah,
the voice
exactly.
of God, essentially.
Yeah, that's right. So, um, Jordan Peterson, if you guys are familiar with him, he actually said he's a classical liberal. They say he was a conservative. They say he's very far right. I think it's ridiculous. He said he's a classical liberal. So he would be in favor of limited government, him having the choice. If he wants to start his own business, then let him start his own business. Don't have, Uncle Sam say what you should or what you should not do. And that's actually very concerning for a lot of Americans today who actually feel like the government has too much power or the government has too much to say into people's lives. I know Milo, oh my goodness, Milo used to talk about that all the time. He used to think that, I mean, it could be true that, because modern liberalism is probably the opposite of classical liberalism, I would say. Modern liberalism is more for big government, is more so for tighter, a bigger social safety net, less capitalism and more socialism in many ways. So I'm sorry, I could go on for days, but I hope I answered the question.
I'm chilling. I think we have another question coming in.
Here, let's do Josh's real quick. And you might have already answered this before, but if Trump had never ran for 2016, who would have you voted for president?
Yeah, right there.
Okay.
So is this like who would I vote for in the primary?
Primary and the general election. So let's say Trump didn't exist, didn't run.
Rand Paul.
Rand Paul.
Rand Paul.
I'd say so. Yeah, I think he'd be a great president. I started liking him even more after I saw him after the election too. Good guy. That's pretty much it. I don't like Ted Cruz, so nah. Lion Ted Cruz.
Lion Ted puts the Bible high, puts it down. He lies.
That was amazing.
That's so funny.
God, man,
that was amazing.
I love that Trump. They're hilarious.
Okay.
On the left.
I will say this. Okay, I think I have to admit this. I was really nervous to say this, but it was after
Ben Carson.
What was his name? No, you know what? Actually, I considered Ben Carson, but
Jim Webb.
I think Jim Webb. I mean, definitely not Jeb Bush. Low energy, too much low energy. Probably, Ben Carson was the consideration. I thought Rand Paul as well, not Ted Cruz, in my opinion. When I didn't like Trump at all when he first ran, not because he was racist, but I just thought he wasn't that smart to run. Not, I didn't think he was racist, especially after those comments he made in the beginning. I just always thought Ted Cruz was the worst out of them all. I just thought he was horrible. A lot of establishment Republicans actually wanted Ted Cruz. They did really want Ted Cruz.
He was the next George Bush. Because they weren't getting it with Jeb Bush, really.
I mean,
evangelical kind of Christian, conservative, who could also vote for the neocons.
Yuck.
See, neoconservatism is oh man, that is just a sick ideology. I'd say. I'm so glad many conservatives, just as much as liberals, can actually point out the absurdity of interventionalist policy of neoconservatism.
Well,
saying we should go start wars.
What's interesting was like when George W. Bush was running for president in 1999-2000, he was a non-interventionist. He was like a libertarian in a sense, where he felt that we were the police force of the world. He wanted to pull back from like South Korea and Germany and everything. And then it was really 9/11 that made him into a neocon.
See, and yeah.
Or the face of neoconservatism, really.
Yeah. See, because can I speak a little bit theologically, just a little bit?
Yeah, go ahead.
I don't understand why, because I do notice that there is a pretty big trend with evangelical Christians becoming much more neocon than I would think, and I would think that their basis of belief of Christianity would be based off of what Jesus was saying, and Jesus never said anything about going out to war with other countries or anything like that. So I'm trying to think that when evangelical Christians say, they try to preach their Christian beliefs within their own political perceptions, I think they get it wrong when they say that we should intervene into other countries, yet Jesus, seemingly pacifist.
No, Jesus was a socialist.
That's what the Pope said.
I don't know why people say that. I don't get why people say that.
Oh,
Like,
please.
sure, he does have. It might seem it seems like he does have socialistic tendencies, but socialism is based off of a government ideology.
Enforcing it
That's
on
what it
people,
is.
which Jesus did not do. He was voluntary.
Well, it's also the views of like the Catholic version versus like the Protestant version. I'd say the Catholic
Yeah.
version's a lot more socialist than, Southern Baptists.
Oh yeah, yeah. Um, Definitely.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel that evangelicals have kind of cooled off from neoconservatism in the late
That's
2000s
good.
with the Tea Party movement, especially. Um, and then especially now with Trump, it's more towards like nationalism, kind of isolationism a little bit. So they seem to be very fluid in their opinions from decade to decade.
Sure.
Yeah.
The thing that I do like a lot about current Republicans is it seems like more current Republicans have become a little bit more liberal on social issues. Because back in the day, they were absolutely
Oh,
like
the
almost all
90s.
of them were against
Right.
gay marriage. Yeah, like Newt Gingrich with "Don't Ask, Don't Tell." I'm assuming you don't support that at all. I would maybe assume.
Um,
Um,
if you're asking my opinion on that, I don't have a problem with gays in the military as long as they're not degenerate about it. If you're on the
sure.
if you're in a foxhole with someone and you're taking fire from the enemy, I don't care if the person next to me is gay. I really don't care. But if the person is
Right.
like pushing transgender rights and wants the government to pay for his, gender reassignment surgery, I have a big issue with that.
Hells no.
Yeah. Yeah. I thought I honestly think that "Don't Ask, Don't Tell" was one of the most ridiculous laws that have ever been passed. Like it's just ridiculous if you think
But
about
Bill
it.
Clinton was your boy.
You can be gay, but just don't tell anyone. Like I don't know. It's just a little weird in my opinion. But I'm glad to see because I will admit that I'm not that religious, but I am a little bit more spiritual. I tend to agree on a lot of Christian based philosophy and all that. But I'm glad that we do have Republicans now that don't believe Christians should have their religion be based off of the laws currently. Like, uh, we should teach creationism in public schools, for instance. That tends to be more in support of a lot of like very, very very hardy like evangelical Christians that think that we should have creationism in schools because I think about the First Amendment.
Yeah.
Always keep religion separate from government. Government should be always secular,
Right.
and
It's either you
religion
promote
should,
all or
yeah,
none, and you can't promote them all equally.
exactly. And this is coming from someone who does have those kind of beliefs.
So,
It should be
You're a
separate.
creationist.
what's that?
Hell freaking no. Are you kidding? Evolution is a fact. I'm sorry. I don't get along with those like young earth creationists. Oh my gosh.
Oh, you should have a
Believing
debate
the
with
world is,
JP's parents.
Wait,
oh
are you a
boy.
flat earther, Tony?
Yes, I am. Very much
Well,
so.
we all,
No. I'm not because people are
we all,
actually going to probably
It's
say
a
Tony's a
hypercube.
flat earther. He just admitted it.
we all know
I'm
the
not a
Earth's a
flat
cube, so that's ridiculous.
That's right. It's a hypercube.
Oh my god.
All right, guys. So
Okay, I feel like
let's start wrapping
yeah.
this up. Give like one final thought, 2
Yep,
minutes
agreed.
max, and then switch it off to the next person, and then let's call it a show.
All right, you first, Tony, or me. I don't care.
First,
It's up to you.
because I'm older. I guess. Okay, so I like to think that this is much more of a discussion than a debate. I do agree with Rick and Darian's approach that this is a conversation for us to learn and for us to have an open mind. And of course, with Darian, knowing him for as long as I know that we're gonna whatever conversations we're gonna have, we're always gonna be brothers. We're always gonna be peaceful. So I just wanted to take the time to say thank you for listening to my opinions. I know that you do have very strong opinions yourself. And I won't lie to say that it's really opened my mind a lot more and it's forcing me to do more
Likewise.
research. Yeah. I mean, see, that's the good thing about debates. Like, holy shit, you can have some good ass arguments and it just leaves you like, holy crap, what do I say? So, all in all, this was a lot of fun. And Rick, you're the president, man. And I just want to say, I want to thank CRU for hosting this. I
Hashtag
feel
not my
so
president.
Hashtag not my president. Yeah. And I just feel so grateful for you to have this whole thing because if it wasn't for you, none of this would have happened. So thankful to CRU.
Thank you.
Yeah. For the ones watching, thank you so much for watching, and that's essentially it. Darian.
Yeah, it was a good debate. I appreciate you, Tony. You've definitely opened my mind and changed my mind on stuff before, so I appreciate you for that. You're a very good friend. for those of you, I don't know if you get you guys, most of us we know you, but Tony and I are hella good friends, so that's cool.
Yeah. November 8th. What was it? November 6th? Hell of a night. Oh.
November 8th, yeah.
November 8th. There we go. Rick, you probably know what.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was there.
No, it was a lot of fun. I enjoyed it. I appreciate hearing your perspective, Tony. You definitely give me a lot to think about. And anyone but Coory Booker 2020. Let's go.
Oh, come on, man.
No, you know what? There's actually a website that like takes bets on like who's most likely to be president. Coory Booker has dropped down to 8th place. Bernie Sanders is actually number 2 right now. So I don't know. It looks like
need a communist.
Bernie's too old. That's where I come from. Bernie is too old, man. He's too old. It's not because of his policy. It's just his age. We need younger.
Democratic socialism.
Yeah.
Rick, do you think we need younger people in office? We have too many damn old.
See, I don't really care about age. I care about what they can bring to the table.
We gotta wrap this up, guys.
No. This is a good point. This is a good point. It really depends on what they can bring to the table. I would rather have like an older, experienced person than a younger, inexperienced person. But it's hard to say. Generally, we want younger people involved in politics. Maybe not up to the very top though. But all right.
Then, with your logic, why didn't you have Hillary Clinton? Wouldn't you support Hillary Clinton then?
Well, it's funny because Clinton said that John McCain was too old, and when she ran for president, she was older than McCain when he was in 2008. So hypocrites all over the place. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
So I want to thank both of you for showing up today. Yeah. We had been talking about this for like up to a month prior to this, recording. And I want to do this more often. So to the audience, if anyone wants to debate us or debate each other and they want a place to host this, I'm more than welcome to. You can contact us at ASU.CollegeRepublicansUnited@gmail.com, or you can contact us on Facebook. But let's do this like every week or so, every other week maybe.
Make sure that's in the description of the video. And yeah. If you have any feedback, please let us know. We'd love it. I mean, for one, we're probably going to make this shorter next time and cover less topics in one video.
Unless the topic is really interesting and everyone's really engaged and we didn't drop off in viewership. But yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. Between me and Darian, what else do we really disagree on? I feel like
we'll save that for. Let's find out later and save that for part 2. All right.
Sure.
All right, guys.
All right, guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.